Bro, imagine, you just fell into a game where if you die, there's no second life. No reload, no respawn, you're just gone. That's the bad part. Good part? The author drew every single girl in this world with one hand. Monsters, villains, heroes, allies. Doesn't matter which side she's on, every one of them turns me into Vladimir. Blood starts moving around my body, and suddenly I want to dive into some puddles. You just arrived in the game, but you're dehydrated with almost no HP. You hear the sound of water and excitedly approach it. As you start to drink, your HP begins to rise, but you hear something around you, now hidden. You observe it, just to get a surprise. God damn it, who drew those fucking clouds? Blood rushed so frantically to the lower body that even 1 HP was lost. But wait, cause she's turning. What? We get hit with the pay for the DLC. Bro shouted in pure anger, but that's when he noticed 4 dangerous girls behind him, saying that he will have to pay to see more than that. Bro's like, what? Boom, head to the floor, 1 HP, and as he looks up, the quintet of mage girls tell him that he will have to pay the price for being such a lewd brat. With this little tongue out, she even says that if he stays quiet, his pants are going to stay on. What does she mean? If it's me, I'm screaming right now. As the witches laugh, the guy to the side says his name is Rudd, and explains that he was unlucky enough to get captured by the witches of the forest. He thinks they're dead, but our boy has some plans. Rudd asks if he knows a way, and our boy says that he's Valor for a reason. Of course, the guy who wrote the secret to beat the witches knows how to get out. He knows the quintet. Gunda is the jail loli. Caldura is the monster freak for crazy guys. Aldaida is the wifey vibes for vanilla. Fugul is the perky brat. And for last, Heijuju is the domineering mommy. This group is famous for having killed thousands of guys. Not gonna lie, I would have been a victim for sure. But our boy knows that their weakness is that they actually hate each other. So bro starts to rage bait those bitches, asking Fugul how she's alive if Heijuju said that she killed her. Heijuju replies that she never said it, but Fugul is already fuming, because she hates the redhead more than anyone. More fire to the wood with bro saying that Heijuju plans to get all of Fugul's assets. Bro's apprehensive, but Heijuju asks what Fugul will do. Yeah, she will take everything. The rest of the quintet also enter, with Aldaida saying that's why Heijuju is making a bomb, Gunda just wanting to eat the protagonist, and Caldura wanting a fight. While the Ragebait King just smiles, if you can call that a smile. Now the fight is starting, and that's the secret. The majority of guys don't know about this detail, and that's why those girls have killed thousands. And then bro says that he will show the secret to escape this place. He pulls the rug under the girls, making everyone fall directly into their own cauldron. As they struggle, bro instantly gets up and starts to run while farming damage on those dumb hoes. That's what he said. Fugul still conjures a snake to grab our boy, but Rude comes in clutch and frees him. Then he takes Rude's bow and shoots an arrow directly over the head of the quintet, into the pot with Heijuju's acid bomb. The chemical reaction sends the whole house into the air, and our boy is spammed with notifications for killing each of the witches, with a total of 300,000 X points. He's drooling over that because this is the secret for the perfect start. But how does he know all the details about the game? See, real-world name, Han Jae-woo. He used to work for loan sharks as their problem solver, and not the Excel spreadsheet kind of problem solver. So what does bro do? He borrows 1 billion won from the same loan sharks he used to break legs for, and buys the dream machine. Top-tier capsule. We open on him inside the demon castle. Every guard on the floor. Standing right in front of him is Wurzburg himself. Bro's ready to finish this and get some money to pay his debts. But then, you are being disconnected from the server. Wurzburg cuts him in half. Because back in reality, the debt collectors trashed his apartment and ripped the cables straight out of his pod. Bro wakes up and immediately grabs one by the collar, asking if he's ready to die. And bro's legs became noodles. They say they were helping him quit gaming. He beats them up anyway. Then he checks his bank account, and it's a big fat zero. They offer him his old job back as their personal fixer. He tells them to get out, he'll pay. But first, he has a mission to finish. Except when he logs back in, death penalty, 22 hours. And that is the exact moment a little jail trap walks up to him and says, looks like you're having some trouble. She introduces herself as Aquila, Game Master of Savior of Humanity. Bro obviously doesn't buy it, so she snaps her fingers and the entire world freezes. He assumes SSS rank time stop. She corrects him. That wasn't a skill. She just crashed the server for a second. Then comes the pitch. 7th anniversary event, a brand new world just unlocked, and she wants him to be the first player with a fresh character. He says no, he's got unfinished business. But she says the reward is 25 billion and instantly drops 30 million won into his account. The world installs around them, and they're standing in front of a single door. Walk through, and you're in the new world. Bro doesn't hesitate. He just reminds her not to forget his money. And as he steps through, she goes, oh, one thing I forgot. If you die in this world, you die in real life. Too late. Doors already closed. So that's how he ended up face first in the dirt of a brand new world. Brand new character, 0 gear, 0 water, and that's when he heard the stream. Which, yeah, you already know how that went. Delicious Heiju in the water, the DLC paywall, and bro managing to blow her up in a different way than I intended. Which brings us right back to Rudd crawling out of that wreckage going, damn, I thought I was done for. He thinks they got insanely lucky. That matters even more because he's still very low level. Rudd admits he had already given up on living, and thanks Han for saving him. To repay him, he offers the protagonist a gift, MC gets a pair of red dragon fruit cuffs and is thrilled. Even in his past runs, he never saw anything like them. Rudd says he took them because they looked important. He stole them from the witches, and he wastes no time using them all at once. Right away, the system announces that he now has Dragon Bone, a trait with huge power. Han watches his stats shoot up. A normal player would never get a boost like this so early, so maybe his luck is finally turning around. Seeing promise in him, Rudd asks the protagonist to become a hunter. The system immediately pops up. MC has unlocked a friendly route with a monster hunter. He does like the offer, but still turns it down at first, saying he has other plans. Rudd calls him a busy kid, and then Han realizes this could actually help him. His current character doesn't have a class, and all that new experience has nowhere to go. If he leaves it unused, it'll be wasted. So he decides to try the hunter path. He asks if 3 months will be enough. Rudd shuts that down fast. According to him, it would take at least 3 years. Once they reach a deal, Rudd takes Han deeper in. There, he tells him to hide anywhere he wants. The protagonist gets 30 minutes before the hunt begins. That is when MC realizes Rudd has a tracking skill he uses on monsters. Even so, Han feels underestimated. Like Rudd sees him as easy prey, but he has been through this forest over and over. He remembers all of it, even the hidden spots. He also knows the trees can ruin anyone's sense of direction, and toxic mushroom spores are spread all over the place. Worse, the forest is full of savage beasts that are even deadlier than the witches. The protagonist has already dealt with most of them before, and the fruits pushed his body close to its limit. With all that, he's sure Rudd won't catch him easily. But he's wrong. Before long, Rudd finds him anyway. Rudd tells him to put in more effort, then adds that he'll still give him 10 bonus points for his drive. Han asks how he found him so fast. Rudd says it's been a long time since he met a student. This interesting. Then he tells MC to keep working hard. The system chimes in. Hunter's hazing quest complete. A new quest starts, Hunter's taunts. As time passes, Han picks up several new hunter skills. He realizes joining Rudd was actually a great move. 3 months later, he's learned a lot. Back at camp, Rudd asks if he has really mastered everything he taught him. The protagonist tells him to test it. He can hide anywhere in the forest if he wants. Rudd says Han's confidence keeps surprising him, so he agrees. But if MC can't find him within an hour, MC has to make dinner. He accepts right away and looks forward to the challenge. Later, while hiding, Rudd thinks he may have finally found an apprentice with real talent. Still, he decides not to go too far. He figures hiding on a cliff for an hour should be enough to stay out of his student's reach. But as he climbs up, Han suddenly grabs his leg and startles him. After that, Rudd tries hiding in the trees, but the protagonist finds him again almost right away. He switches spots again and again, and every time MC tracks him down. Soon Rudd starts wondering how someone could learn in 3 months what took him 5 years. As a last option, Rudd hides in a cave. He's sure Han won't find him there, since it's known as the Hellhound's Den. But he surprises him even there. He says, Guardian of Humanity, tip number 1, not even an earthquake can wake a sleeping hellhound. Then he asks his master if he passed. Still stunned, Rudd says yes. Outside the cave, Rudd admits he never expected progress this fast. The protagonist answers modestly, saying he just had a great teacher. Of course, Han knows his system helped a lot, but he keeps that to himself. He lets Rudd take the credit. Even then, Rudd praises him, saying MC isn't just talented, he also remembers everything. He's never met anyone like him, and he's sure he will go far. Now that the training is done, Rudd asks if the protagonist will move on to the task he mentioned before. Han says he wants to make some money first, then keep traveling. Rudd mentions a close friend who works as a mercenary and asks if MC is interested. He doesn't think that sounds bad at all. It would be a good way to earn some starter money, and the job is easy to join with a flexible schedule. If he's lucky, he might even run into some of the game's guardians. So he decides to take the offer. Rudd gives him a mercenary badge and says his friend will accept him right away if he shows it. Then Rudd says goodbye and wishes him luck. Han thinks beating the witches and getting a class was an amazing start to the game. At this pace, a happy ending might not be that far away. But the protagonist's real goal is the true ending. He only accepted Aquila's offer because she promised clues that could lead him there. To Han, the real thrill of the game is never knowing when death might come. He wants to enjoy that tension as much as he can. That's why he's eager to meet Aquila again and chase the true ending. As for Aquila, she's been watching from a distance, amused by MC's progress. Now she's sure picking him as her VIP was the perfect choice. Then another woman walks up and says that Han is definitely no ordinary person. Aquila teasingly asks if her coworker has a crush on him. Valferga answers that she's a goddess, so there is no reason for her to look at a human she protects that way. Aquila doesn't see the problem. She thinks Han is cute. She also says Valferga has been way too serious lately, and remembers when she used to be much more fun. Valferga brushes that off as ancient history, then changes the subject and asks if Aquila really paid the protagonist's debt. Aquila says yes, so Valferga asks why Han was never told. He still thinks he's working to pay it back. Aquila casually says it's fun watching him play with so much energy, and Valferga calls that awful. Then she asks if MC is part of some bigger plan or just a toy for Aquila. Aquila says Han is more like a promising talent, and she wants to keep watching him very closely. Back with him, his legs start hurting, so he finally sits down. He grumbles that this forest is exhausting. He's so tired he wants to sleep for 12 straight hours, but he can't stop now. The mercenary guild is close. When he reaches Frankfurt, he heads into the Francois tavern. The waitresses welcome him warmly. Han says he's looking for someone, and one of them quickly offers him a table. As he sits down, the protagonist realizes this tavern is a great place to gather information. Good food, good drinks, and people talk more when they're relaxed, which makes it perfect for learning about the mercenary guild. It also doesn't hurt that he finds the waitresses pretty cute. Making the most of the friendly service, Han asks if they know anyone named Rebus Schultz. The second he says that name, the mood changes. One waitress quickly warns him not to say it in here. Another says the man is extremely dangerous. Her boyfriend, she explains, got involved with Rebus Schultz and came back looking like a mummy. Others ended up the same way. Han starts wondering what kind of mess Rudd sent him into. The waitress tells him to run while he still can, warning that the man could show up at any second, but trying to protect MC only puts him right in danger. Rebus Schultz notices him, spots Rudd's insignia, and says he must be the one he heard about. He adds that the timing is perfect because he was just looking for a new partner. The protagonist already knows this is bad news and still can't believe Rudd dropped him into this. After talking with Rebus Schultz for a bit, Han learns he's being taken to the war between the Elector Prince and Pessimut's army. But Rebus isn't stupid. He quickly figures out the truth. He's really being smuggled off as a slave for some foreign force. Even so, he doesn't run. Instead, he sees a chance. The Elector Prince is one of the game's guardians, one of Paltz's electors. Through him, Han thinks he might learn about the other guardians too. A trumpet sounds a moment later. Rebus Schultz grins and says the timing couldn't be better. The prince has arrived. As the cavalry passes by, Rebus Schultz says he would fit in well working with them. But this isn't what Han expected at all. When he sees the Elector Prince, the man looks more like a villain than a hero. Then he notices someone beside the prince, Lady Valpurgis. The prince asks if something is wrong since she seems distracted. Lady Valpurgis tells him not to worry. Then they continue toward the battlefield. In Han's past playthroughs, Valpurgis fought by his side. He hates that he could never save her. Every time, it always ended with her death. Rebus Schultz notices the protagonist's reaction and asks if something is bothering him. The protagonist says no, but inside he swears that this time he'll find a path where Valpurgis lives, even if it costs him his life. Sometime later, they arrive at the training grounds. After watching the others, Han can tell things here are no joke. Rebus said they were picking squad leaders through fights, and the winners would get paid too. Pride and money were both tempting, but MC only cared about reaching the Elector Prince. Laying low seemed like the smartest move. Rebus wouldn't let that happen. He insisted he join, saying Rudd wouldn't have sent him here without a reason. Then he asked who wanted to test the newcomer. A bunch of mercenaries stepped up right away. That pretty much killed any chance Han had of refusing. Since he was stuck fighting, he decided he had to win, even if he needed to use his power. His first opponent, Max, laughed at him and said that with a body like his, one hit would be enough. Once both fighters were set, Rebus checked that they were ready. Then he gave the signal, and Max rushed in. Han knocked his weapon away with a single strike. Everyone around them was stunned. The protagonist won in one blow. That shocked the whole group since Max was one of their best. But instead of backing off, the others got even more excited to fight him. Han wanted no part of this, but nearly every mercenary lined up to challenge him, so he beat them one after another. At least he used the matches to raise his stats. Then another fighter stepped forward and introduced himself as Charlotte. Unlike the rest, he bragged that a rookie wouldn't make a fool of him. He walked up, mocking MC's small build. Han figured it was time to stop for a bit, but then he learned he couldn't log out of the game. He knew Aquila was behind it. All he wanted was a few minutes to rest, and even that was gone. So he had no choice but to face the next match. With nowhere to run, he decided to end it properly. So Han used a judo throw on his opponent and slammed the big man down in an instant. Even after Charlotte was knocked out, Han still thought he was seriously heavy. Even the mercenary leader looked impressed by Charlotte's defeat. The rest got even more curious about his strength and wanted to test it themselves, which was the last thing the protagonist wanted. Rebus finally stepped in and told everyone to get back from the newcomer. MC was thrilled, thinking he'd finally get a break. Then Rebus announced that the newcomer was the chosen one and named him Valorstead Valor. He was the new group leader. After that, the mercenaries got ready for war, with Han put in charge by the guild leader. Soon they were thrown into a messy battlefield. Rebus gave the order to attack and the mercenaries charged at once. Waiting for them was an army of trolls. Han didn't hesitate. He jumped straight into the fight and kept attacking. He believed he was now fighting on the Elector Prince's side. Rebus had told them this battle was against Demon King Pessimut's orc army. Their goal was simple: steal the enemy commander's flag. If they punched through the enemy line, they could use that gap to crush the rest of their defense. Still, Rebus warned them that orcs were proud, strong, and worked together well. He told Valorstead Valor to lead the squad and stop the enemy push. Out in the battle, Han couldn't believe he was actually leading mercenaries. He had a different plan: earn some war merit, then get out. Before long, an orc ran to his captain and reported that their spearmen were getting slaughtered. The captain refused to accept it, saying his spearmen were elites. He grabbed a spyglass to check himself. What he saw startled him. Han's group was tearing through the field. The captain ordered his troops to line up their muskets. Then they fired at the humans. He quickly judged that muskets weren't a great tactic here. They took too long to reload and needed constant rotation. The second the enemy switched firing lines, Han called out that now was the time to attack. He charged with his squad and smashed through them. One orc couldn't believe his men were getting wiped out by a human this weak looking. Still, he knew the advance had to be stopped. He was carrying the flag that held his tribe's pride and history, but the orc bearer was no match. In the end, the mercenary squad won. Han took the banner for his side. Now he just had to hold out a little longer to get the merit he wanted. Then one of his allies ran up with bad news. The rest of the army was falling back instead of pushing forward. Worse, orc reinforcements had arrived. Han panicked. Victory had looked so close and he couldn't understand why everyone else ran. One of his men asked what they should do. The protagonist still couldn't make sense of the retreat. His whole group was trapped and cut off. On the orc side, the hidden commander, the great General Calione, called out to the human warriors and told them to stop. He offered them mercy, leave the flag behind and retreat now, and he would spare them out of respect for their courage. Han shot back that an orc's promise meant nothing to him and said he'd make good use of their banner. Furious, Calione roared at him for daring to insult their sacred flag. MC answered that war has no rules. If victory needed it, he and his men would do anything. That answer did exactly what he wanted. It provoked the enemy. The orcs moved into formation at once and Calione ordered them to fire. The humans were in a terrible spot under that rain of shots. Then Han's system gave him a warning. His intimidation had failed. He couldn't understand why. It had always worked in past runs. Either way, he and his squad were stuck under enemy fire, and his men were starting to lose hope. The enemy had a famous general, and none of them believed they could survive someone as strong as General Calione. Even Han didn't know what to do. Then memories of past battles flashed through his mind, and he remembered the truth. If he died here, he died for real. That realization hit him hard. As if that wasn't enough, his men begged their leader to give an order before they were all killed. Instead, the protagonist suddenly burst out laughing, making his men think he'd finally snapped. Then he asked for Charlotte's trumpet. One ally warned that blowing it wouldn't bring reinforcements. Han insisted he knew what he was doing, so he blew the trumpet as hard as he could. One of the men pointed out that he had sounded it in the opposite direction from where their allies retreated, but MC said he knew that, and told them to keep blocking the shots. At the same time, he thought that if Aquila had any pride at all, she wouldn't leave him now, especially not when he was a VIP. Across the field, the orc general ordered his spearmen forward. An enemy warrior suddenly rushed the humans and drove his spear toward Han. Just before it could land, the attacker was struck down. Then a new figure entered the battle. Lady Valpurgis arrived on a unicorn. She had heard the trumpet and called on the humans to keep fighting. She told every soldier not to lower their swords because the battle wasn't over. The orc leader then ordered his own men not to interfere. He declared that this was the Countess of Niederbayern, and from here on it was a duel between nobles. Valpurgis told the general that he was honest, but not enough. Then she attacked, and the two clashed in a fierce duel. Han watched, completely captivated. Even this early in the story, Valpurgis was already unbelievably strong. Meanwhile, the orc was being pushed back. Valpurgis showed no mercy. Her attacks kept getting heavier. Even so, the orc endured. He admitted that the Countess had more than great sword skills. Her hand-to-hand fighting was impressive too. He guessed she had to be Valpurgis' sister, since that kind of command made sense. Valpurgis answered that she served God with all her heart, and she hated wasting time. Then she came at him again. The orc general seemed to enjoy the fight more and more, swinging harder as he tried to land a hit. But Valpurgis was faster than him. She dodged his attack and struck back at once. After that, the orc said it had been a great fight, then dropped to the ground defeated. Once his soldiers saw their leader fall, they grabbed him and retreated. Han was amazed that such a powerful captain had been taken down in a single blow. Now he understood what Lady Valpurgis was really capable of. Valpurgis walked up and asked if he was the mercenaries' leader. She said she had sensed his courage from afar, then introduced herself properly. Han gave the name Valorstead, Valor, and greeted her, saying they all would have died if she hadn't arrived. But in his head, he reminded himself that he wasn't using his old steel electric character now, so he had to stay careful. Then his squad came over and said they had something for him. They handed the captured banner to Valorstead Valor, since he was their leader. That instantly raised his standing with the mercenaries. Thinking back on the battle, and realizing how close he came to dying, he lifted the banner in celebration and declared it was his. Later, at Francois Tavern, a young girl came in asking for Charlotte. Han was immediately charmed by her. Noticing his wounds, she asked if he had gone off to war again. Curious, the protagonist asked if she was Charlotte's daughter, but one of the mercenaries said no. He explained that she was Charlotte's 15-year-old little sister, Baptiste. She quickly scolded Han, saying her brother got hurt because of him and demanding he pay for Charlotte's doctor. Charlotte cut in and said their leader was the reason they all made it back alive. The others backed him up, saying their leader had saved them from being eaten by orcs. MC got embarrassed and told them all to just eat. Right then, Valpurgis walked into the tavern and everyone turned to look. He was stunned. He definitely hadn't expected the Countess to show up there. A little later, she brought him to the forward base at Harfheim. Valpurgis explained that the Steel Elector had personally asked to see him and wanted to reward him with military honors. She told him that for a mercenary, this was the highest honor possible. Han thought she seemed different from how he remembered, almost more excited about it than he was. Valpurgis said the soldiers there were alive because of his actions, and without his courage none of them would have survived. She added that imperial citizens were still alive thanks to him too, and that was why she was so happy. Her words stirred up an old memory in the protagonist, a time when Valpurgis had protected him under strange circumstances, that made him realize she hadn't changed at all. Only their relationship had. In this run, he was just a mercenary, and she was a noble. Then Valpurgis stepped forward and introduced him to his majesty. The Steel Elector says he's glad to finally meet the famous Valor. He introduces himself simply as Philip. Han bows and thinks the pressure coming off a real guardian is overwhelming. Philip says MC is now known as the Death of the Field. He praises his courage, saying his bravery is like a lion's. The man like that deserves a reward. So Philip grants the mercenaries about 100 florins and gives the protagonist 300. Han says he'll repay that kindness someday. Then he adds that he has one request. He wants to rejoin his companions and rest in Wiedenbeer. Even though Wiedenbeer is far away, Philip agrees and also gives him an empty shed to use, however he wants. He then asks if MC needs anything else. He would usually say no, but this strange moment makes him pause. After a quick glance at Walpurgis, he gets an idea. So he says he has a personal question for his majesty. Philip tells him to ask, and Han does. He wants to know what the Steel Elector really thinks about this war. Philip doesn't answer right away. The room goes quiet, and just like the protagonist expected, everyone is confused. He's only a mercenary. Instead of answering, Philip asks what Han thinks first. MC says his view is limited, but one thing keeps bothering him. A noble cuts in, asking if he thinks one military reward makes him fit to advise them on war. Another joins him, saying the protagonist probably just heard rumors and panicked for no reason. Walpurgis steps in for him. She says they shouldn't judge by appearances, and urges Philip to hear the young mercenary out. Philip's uncle snaps at Walpurgis, calling her shameless for speaking to his nephew that way. But Philip shuts him down, reminding him that Walpurgis is the niece of the Elector of Barons and deserves proper respect. Han expected as much. Even the Steel Elector can't brush Walpurgis aside. Philip agrees to listen and asks what MC sees coming in this war. He answers with one warning: an ambush is coming. Philip asks how a mercenary can be so sure. Han explains that Demon King Pessimut has always relied on ambushes and betrayal. He brings up the 10-year war with the Toe Kingdom and the 6-year fight against Margrave and Hot. In both wars, Philip's tactics were what decided the outcome, so the protagonist says they can never be too careful about betrayal. Philip's expression darkens, and he asks if MC is saying there's a traitor among them. He says he's only raising the possibility, being cautious can't hurt. Philip agrees with that much and remarks that Han is bold. Then irritated, he says the protagonist's head is still on his shoulders only because he allows it, so he should remember his place. Walpurgis tries to speak up for him again, but MC backs off on his own and apologizes. He then asks for permission to leave. As he walks out, he thinks the Steel Elector used to be much more careful. This time, he was arrogant, and he can't figure out why. All he knows is that something is wrong. For one thing, Red, who should have appeared later, showed up too soon. That makes the protagonist realize this time, everything is changing. While he's lost in thought, Walpurgis calls after him. She ran to catch up, smiling. She says he walks pretty fast. Han asks if she came after him, because she was worried. She admits she was and apologizes for Philip's harsh words. She also offers to help him with anything he needs. That much kindness from the Countess leaves MC a little flustered. Her saying she'd do anything for him sends his mind racing. For a second, his imagination runs wild, though he knows none of that will really happen. So he asks for something practical instead, a quill and a pistol. Walpurgis looks surprised. She asks if that's really all he wants, saying she doesn't make offers like this to just anyone. Han says he dreams of becoming a knight, and he plans to use those things while learning to ride. Walpurgis tells him she's never met anyone quite like him. Then she says this isn't the right place for that talk and takes him somewhere more private. Seeing Walpurgis so bright and cheerful fills him with joy. Later, at Harfheim Peak, the Steel Elector's army faces the troops of Demon King Pessimut. Philip points at the enemy and declares that today, he'll kill him. Pessimut just laughs at that. One of his allies walks up and reports that their war plans are ready. He also warns that relying on that woman may be a bad idea, but the demon ignores him. The ally argues that she's too cruel. If they capture the Elector, he'll be a valuable hostage, so leaving that job to a madwoman is dangerous. The demon says he knows and claims he'll keep things under control. Right then, the woman herself steps forward before her lord. He praises her work but tells her not to go too far. She answers that she always knows her limits. The demon says that's not true. Even then, she insists she's never crossed the line. The demon has to admit that part is true, and he doesn't even want to imagine what she'd be like if she really did lose control. Elsewhere, Han is training with his horse, Philly. Philly is incredibly fast. Since he's a dueling horse, the protagonist thinks the animal suits the young lady of Houseborns perfectly. She even gave him an expensive potion that can fully heal whoever drinks it. Then an explosion goes off. Han realizes the battle has already started and rushes out. He knows this is the moment Philip could still be betrayed, especially after ignoring the warning. Philip is about to learn the truth the hard way. His uncle is the traitor, and he's been working with the enemy. The uncle mocks him and says Philip doesn't understand anything. He claims his nephew was plotting against the emperor by turning the rebels. The moment he noticed that, he says he chose to work with Pessimut. In his eyes, Philip is the real traitor. After saying all that, the old man asks if his nephew understands now. Philip scoffs and says no one would ever believe such a stupid lie. Before he can do more, the demon slams him to the ground. Calling him a fool who won't accept reality, he orders his servants to seize him. Terrified, Philip shouts that he's a noble and no one should dare touch him. But the enemy moves in to capture him. Walpurgis slips in from the side. Then she reveals herself with a crushing kick straight into the demon lord. She isn't alone either, and she orders her soldiers to get his majesty out of danger. The enemy rages as his captive starts getting away. He instantly orders Hexax to chase Philip. She had been playing with other victims, but now she's told to start her real job at once. Hexax grins and tells her zombie dogs that dinner is ready. They're already starving, so she barely has to push them. A moment later, the hounds tear off after their prey, and Han suddenly comes face to face with them. He clicks his tongue. Of course, the enemy brought zombie dogs. He knows Hexax uses them to wear her enemies down. They tear people apart little by little, and MC hates that filthy method. Still, he understands how Hexax fights. Since only a few dogs are here, the rest must be chasing Philip. Han doesn't care about Philip's pride. The only one he's worried about is Walpurgis, so he runs straight toward her. Not far away, Philip and Walpurgis are fleeing from the dogs. Philip complains that his mana control is a mess and blames the enemy for it. He says only the demon lord could pull off something like this. While they're running, one dog leaps in and nearly hits Philip. But Walpurgis cuts in and stops it, just in time, moving with the same speed that has saved them again and again. Worried for his safety, she warns Philip that they're in demon territory and must be extremely careful. Then one of Philip's men is struck and begs his majesty to save him. Philip does nothing. Walpurgis moves to help, but Philip stops her. He tells her to leave the man behind and keep going. That doesn't sit well with her. Walpurgis says her life isn't worth more than anyone else's, and a noble's duty is to protect the people under them, not throw them away. She thinks none of this would be happening if Philip had listened to Valor. She even blames herself for being unable to help. In that moment of distress, Hexax catches her. With a grin, Hexax comments on how unpredictable they are. Walpurgis even cries out for his majesty to help her, but when Philip sees her captured, he chooses to run instead. He abandons Walpurgis without hesitation. In shock, she realizes she's been fooled. Someone like Philip doesn't deserve to be called a lector. Meanwhile, Hexax keeps attacking, smiling as she watches her prey suffer. Then a gunshot rings out nearby. One of her hounds drops. The second Hexax is distracted. Han charges in. His punch slams hard into Hexax. When Walpurgis sees Valor come to save her, she's completely stunned. She never thought he'd be here, yet she's clearly relieved. To her, he looks like a hero. Then she passes out and falls. Han quickly carries Walpurgis to a safer spot. He knows he can only get her out if he defeats the demon servant first. Hexax realizes he killed one of her dogs and got close enough that she never even noticed him. That tells her he's no ordinary fighter. Han looks at Hexax and says she hasn't changed at all. Confused, Hexax asks where they know each other from. He answers that he'd never forget a wicked face like hers. Hexax eyes his weapon and admits it's pretty nice, with good range too, but warns that if his aim is off, her whip will catch him first. The protagonist doesn't wait around. He fires but only tears through her cape. Hexax snaps back with her whip at once. It loops around Han's neck. Locked in place, he's yanked forward and Hexax smashes him with a headbutt. The hit is strong enough to send him flying. Thrilled, Hexax says the fun isn't over, but when she swings again, she misses. Han slips past the attack and tries to fire from range. Hexax catches on to what he's doing. She whips at him again and again to stop the shot, but every strike misses. She can hardly believe it. No one has ever dodged her like that before. Hexax had always believed no one could beat her with a whip, so seeing someone dodge her attacks completely threw her off. Han got ready to fire, but Hexax was set on not giving him a single chance. Even so, he caught her off guard again. Instead of pulling the trigger, he rushed in and stabbed her with a dagger. After landing the hit, Han mocked her, asking, "So Hexax, how do you like my dagger?" That's when Hexax realized focusing only on his gun had cost her one eye. She had to recover fast, so she spread her demonic wings. She said she'd love to keep fighting, but this battle would have to wait. Han immediately mocked her again. "What? Running away? Scared you'll lose?" Hexax brushed it off. She knew close combat wasn't her strong point, and she wasn't stupid enough to fall for cheap taunts. MC answered that it didn't matter. He had a ranged weapon too. Hexax bragged that dodging bullets was easy for her. But when she tried to focus, she noticed her balance and sense of distance were completely off. Losing an eye had messed her up badly, and when Han fired, the shot hit her clean. He said the best way to kill a bat was with one direct shot. Watching her take the hit, he smirked and said Hexax was finally learning what suffering felt like. Then he joked about what kind of loot she'd drop after he killed her. Desperate to survive, Hexax tried to seduce him, but Han's heart was colder than she expected. It didn't work at all. After winning, the protagonist got some useful loot and was satisfied. Still, he knew there was no time to waste. He took out a healing potion and hurried to Walpurgis, knowing it was her only chance. Before using it, Peony carefully checked the instructions. He learned the potion had to be placed right on the wound, which meant removing Walpurgis's armor. He tried to stay calm, telling himself he was only doing this to save her. Then he focused hard, determined not to mess up. At that moment, a strong memory hit him. His father died from sickness when he was young, and his mother later collapsed from working too hard. Because of that, Han was living alone before he even turned 18. At 22, he got a job collecting debts in Hanam-dong. He acted tough, but he often went easy on people who owed money. One day, he met a debtor who made money by playing video games. The guy said one big mission would earn enough to clear what he owed. That made Han curious, so he asked about the game. The young man excitedly told him about its huge world, and even bragged that the female characters were prettier than real women. He said it was an RPG, but what made it special was its huge player base around the world, and the fact that top players could actually get paid for hard missions. Han had a hard time believing a game could make real money, so the guy told him to try it for himself. At first he said he was too busy, then an appointment got cancelled, and his schedule suddenly opened up. Not long after that, he logged in for the first time. The moment he used the VR capsule, he was blown away by how real everything felt. The people in the streets seemed so lifelike that he almost forgot it was a game. A fruit seller caught his eye, and Han reached out to test how real the man was. The vendor instantly snapped at him and said he'd only sell fruit to someone with money. That was when the protagonist saw the system for the first time. It told him he currently had 10 florins. He thought about moving on, but then a little boy showed up asking for an apple, and his mother couldn't afford one. Han asked the vendor the price, and it was 1 florin, so he bought the apple and handed it to the boy. The mother thanked him and said he didn't have to spend his money on her child. From that, MC realized 1 florin was worth about a day's food. He said goodbye to them, and the moment reminded him of his own childhood. He remembered walking with his mother and staring at the roasted chicken sold near their home. Little by little, Han fell in love with the game, and after that day, he never stopped playing. Whenever real life became too much, the game became his escape. He spent more and more time there, while his real life faded into the background. In that world, he could dump all the stress from his job onto the enemies he fought. Real life was just waking up and working. The game gave him another way to live. He spent the next 5 years inside it. Then one day, he was approached by Valpurgis for the first time. She said she'd heard about his skill and invited him to hunt wild boars with her. Han told her he was actually looking for meat, so her timing was perfect. It didn't take him long to catch a boar. While Valpurgis praised his skill, he couldn't believe she'd done nothing. She casually said he was so strong she didn't need to step in, then asked him to team up with her. Han asked if that meant some kind of contract where he'd be stuck working for her all day. Valpurgis said no, and asked if he really didn't trust her. He answered that he didn't trust people in general, which only made her laugh. Then she decided to recommend him as a knight of the Empire, and it soon became real. Even Valpurgis, who knew his talent, was surprised by how far he'd come so fast. He became the Elector of Steel. Han said he didn't reach that point by himself. If he hadn't met her, he never would have done it. Valpurgis answered that he had saved many people and brought peace with him. Because of that, the people gave him their loyalty, and Valpurgis gave him hers as well. She had always admired the Elector of Steel. Back in the present, those feelings still hadn't changed. Even if reality was different now, she still felt something for him. She admitted that, despite his age, she'd never seen anyone so devoted. Then she asked what drove him. Han said he loved this world and everything in it, even if his face was now totally beat up. Valpurgis kind of understood, but she still argued that he shouldn't have taken off her armor, even if he insisted it was the only way to save her. Then she changed the subject and said they needed to get to the Valpurgis convent soon, because the others needed to know they were alive. She promised to repay him when they returned. After all, saving her life deserved more than a simple thank you. Even battered and bruised, Han secretly looked forward to that. Valpurgis innocently added that the convent would probably reward valor too, but the protagonist said her reward interested him more. Sometime later, they reached the Valpurgis convent. Valpurgis introduced MC to Angela, but the nun refused to let him stay. She said the convent was sealed off, so Valor wasn't allowed inside. Later, at a tavern near Rheinfelden, Han sat there thinking over everything that had happened. He considered asking the Valpurgis convent for the angel's heart, an ancient relic kept for centuries and known as an S-rank holy item. Blessed by the goddess, it could return a soul to its owner. In other words, anyone who held it basically had a second life. Han wanted it badly. It would be a huge help on his journey. While he was lost in thought, Valpurgis suddenly entered his room. She apologized for coming in without warning, then seemed confused to find him hanging upside down. He calmly said it helped him think. Valpurgis then told him she had something secret to share, but first she made him promise not to tell anyone. Once she was sure she could trust him, she began. Valpurgis revealed that the high abyss had fallen. Han was confused since he'd just spoken with Angela, but Valpurgis explained that the current high abyss was Margaretha. She also believed there was a traitor among them, most likely because of Pessimot. What really shocked the protagonist, though, was hearing that Margaretha might still be alive. He hadn't even thought that was possible. Margaretha was a legendary protector of humanity, strong enough to subdue even a low-ranked demon king. She was a symbol of pure strength. On top of that, she had turned the Valpurgis convent into a powerful military force. Han suddenly stood and said they needed to save her. Caught off guard, Valpurgis asked what was wrong. MC insisted they had to find the high abyss, and Valpurgis, saying she knew darkness better than anyone, agreed to go with him. A little later in the convent office, Angela listened as Valpurgis explained the plan. Valpurgis spoke up for Han and urged Angela to trust him this once. Angela clearly hated the idea. He quickly figured out that Valpurgis had already told the Abyss all about him, which explained Angela's reaction. Then Angela suddenly stepped toward them, startling both of them. She said there was a traitor in their ranks, so trusting an outsider was dangerous. She went further and said Han had no right to be there, ordering Valpurgis to take him out. The protagonist quickly argued that he was worried about the High Abyss, but Angela coldly said it was none of his business. Still, MC revealed that he had already read the Gospel of the Seven Demons. Angela was stunned. She couldn't understand how, since it was a book written by Saint Anthony himself. Han explained that the book covered many things, including the 7 demons who had been sealed away and cast out of this world. It also mentioned death, one of the most violent powers of darkness. Angela warned that even saying such names out loud raised the chance of something terrible happening, making the topic dangerous to discuss. Even so, he begged her to trust him, saying he knew exactly how to fight back against the darkness. With no better option, Angela agreed, but only on one condition. He had to keep everything secret. If she ever found out he told anyone, she swore she'd make him suffer for it. Soon after, Han was taken to a hidden place. A terrible smell hit him the moment he arrived. He recognized it from Angela's desk, but this time it was much stronger. The protagonist had never seen Margaretha before, but he'd heard the stories. She was said to be strong enough to leg press a ton on each side. Seeing him tense up, Valpurgis tried to reassure him. Han then asked if she planned to build a body as strong as the other nuns. She said yes, but her uncle disapproved, so she had to hold herself back in training. When they got there, Angela warned them the demonic energy inside was overwhelming. She said it could easily break a person's mind, so everyone else had to stay outside. Then she opened the door. The moment it opened, MC felt a crushing force pouring out from inside. Valpurgis said the goddess's blessing would protect her, but she was still worried about him. Han said he'd be okay. His system gave him protection, so he chose to keep going. Angela told him this was the High Abyss's room. The second he saw her, he froze in shock. This was nothing like how he'd imagined Margaretha. She looked so delicate that he couldn't believe she was the same person rumored to train with absurd weights. Angela cut him off and told him to focus. They had already tried everything they could for Margaretha, and now they had no choice but to trust a mercenary. Even if she hated the idea, Han was their last chance. If he could save the High Abyss, Angela promised any reward he wanted. He agreed to help, but first asked the nun to let him go. Then he said Margaretha was in serious danger. As a saint, she absorbed darkness twice as fast as a normal person. The black veins on her neck proved it. Even so, he said there was still a way to save her. Desperate, Angela asked how. Han told her to stay calm. After a short pause, he explained that the method was actually simple. They had to remove the darkness from the High Abyss and use the convent's holy relic on Margaretha. Angela turned to the High Abyss and asked if he meant the angel's heart. As she understood it, the dark curse on the High Abyss would have to be moved to someone else, and because holy power and curses clash, the High Abyss would die during the transfer without the relic. That's why the angel's heart was necessary, and Han said she was exactly right. The curse would kill any cleric, so no one in the convent could take it. That's why he had to do it. But Angela said that plan couldn't work. The High Abyss herself had forbidden it. She said this darkness was hers alone and no one else should suffer for her. Han offered himself as the new vessel for the curse. Angela refused. They were dealing with a dark curse and no one fully understood its cause or symptoms. She didn't think anyone could survive it, and if he did, he'd carry it for the rest of his life. While Purgis agreed, there was no reason for him to throw his life away for the High Abyss. The protagonist thanked them for caring, but said this was still the best choice. He had read the Gospel of the Seven Demons and understood darkness better than most. Since he wasn't a cleric, he wasn't as vulnerable to it. On top of that, he was only an outsider, so Angela shouldn't be worrying about him. She should be worrying about her High Abyss. At last, Angela gave in, though she said the High Abyss would definitely scold her once she woke up. Even so, she brought out the angel's heart. As Han took the relic, he briefly thought about saving it for later, but this was the perfect chance to win Margaretha over. Walpurgis tried one more time to change his mind. Angela calmed her down, saying he was a man who wanted to face whatever came next. With that, MC prepared to begin the ritual. He put a hand on Margaretha and spoke the spell. Not long after, the curse started affecting him. Even from a distance, Angela and Walpurgis could feel that evil spreading around them. Then Han was pulled into another world. Everything around him was black, but he knew he had to find the source of the darkness. Then a voice spoke, "Who dares disturb me?" He introduced himself as Valorstead. Valoran said he came to free Margaretha. The voice mocked him, saying a mere human couldn't do that. It called him insane for standing against something far stronger than him. Then it ordered him to disappear. But to its surprise, it couldn't pull out Han's soul, and it had no idea why. The protagonist answered by ordering the dark being to release Margaretha and take him instead. The creature snapped back that it wouldn't obey a human. And besides it devoured souls, it didn't let them go. Han decided that if it wanted to play dirty, he would too. So he claimed he'd read the Gospel of the Seven Demons, and even traded his dog for it with Death Smasher itself. He added that the thing was probably out there selling cheap copies to other sages by now. So if this creature kept dragging things out, all its secrets would end up exposed. That taunt worked, and the being agreed to the exchange, but only with a condition. Right away, a quest popped up in MC's system. He had to kill every demon king backed by destructive death, and Han knew that was way beyond him. So he tried to bargain, saying he was too weak for a task like that. Instead of negotiating, the shadow decided to lend him some of its dark power, just enough to carry out the mission. Terrified, Han thought he was about to die. He shouted that this wasn't the deal, but the creature answered that nothing in this world is free. If he wanted great power, he had to pay a great price. The pain was unbearable, and even after gaining a massive boost, he died. But some time later, back at the convent, he jolted awake in a bed and realized he was still alive. He quickly remembered the relic he had used and understood it had given him another chance. With that, Han started celebrating. With these new powers, he could become the king of necromancy, commanding an army of the dead. More than that, he was the only player with skills like these, and it didn't take long for him to climb to the top of the game's rankings. Now he felt sure he'd finally get the recognition he deserved. Right in the middle of that excitement, Walpurgis came to see him. Tearing up, she said she heard his voice and couldn't believe he was awake. She explained that he passed out after the ritual, so she carried him to her room. Now that he was safe, she told him never to do something like that again. She had been terribly worried. Han took her hand and apologized for scaring her. He promised he wouldn't do it again. That was enough for her to accept his apology. But then they both noticed a commotion outside. Worried, Han stepped out and asked what was happening. Angela noticed he was finally awake but said he wasn't the only one. Then he realized who was behind all the noise. Margareta declared she'd slept long enough and needed to get some exercise. She also said she was glad to finally meet the person who saved her. Then she introduced herself properly as Margareta, the High Abyss of Walpurgis Convent. He already knew her name, of course, but she added that he could call her Mari. After that, they went down to the basement. Han figured Philip had probably made it out of the deep forest by now. Now that he'd finally reached the top necromancer class, Cold Blood, his plan was to quietly kill Philip, but without the angel's heart, and with Philip being a guardian, the odds were still bad. So he decided he couldn't relax until it was truly over, even while Margareta was bursting with excitement about a new adventure. Seeing that, Angela told Margareta to act with a little more dignity. Margareta fired back that Angela was just getting grumpy with age. Even Han thought her behavior was a bit over the top, but Walpurgis said she'd always been like that. The protagonist found it hard to believe someone like Margareta was both the youngest and strongest military force in the convent. He expected someone much more serious. When she noticed MC and Walpurgis talking, Margareta cut in and teased that they seemed pretty close. Then she explained that the door in front of them led to Walpurgis's underground armory, packed with all kinds of gear. A lot of it wasn't just for battle either. It was magical and perfect for a mercenary like him. Han thanked her, and Margareta instantly replied, "Then pay me back by taking me on a date." Angela was furious the moment she heard that. Margareta insisted there was nothing wrong with it. Then she opened the door. With the right equipment, Han thought Philip wouldn't stand a chance. Sometime later, he headed for the stable to meet his horse. Now that he was fully geared up, he was eager to face Philip. But just as he was about to leave, Walpurgis showed up and asked if he was really leaving without saying goodbye. She asked him to take one last ride with her. On the way, Walpurgis said that even though they'd only known each other a short time, it felt like she had known him forever. She remembered everything he'd done, fighting beside her against the orcs, saving her during Hexax's ambush, and even rescuing the High Abyss. Because of all that, she felt deeply grateful. After a pause, she asked if there was anything he wanted to know. Han played dumb and asked what she meant. Walpurgis scoffed and told him not to act innocent. She knew he was curious about what she looked like without the helmet. The protagonist admitted he'd always assumed there was an important reason she kept it on, so he chose not to ask. Walpurgis revealed that a large scar lay beneath it, left by a curse. She didn't even know what kind of curse it was. All she knew was that her uncle had spent her whole life telling her nobody could ever know, so she kept it hidden. Still, she said with a sigh, people called her the ugly knight without knowing the truth. Even so, she decided she'd show her face to him. Nervous, Walpurgis removed her helmet. Han saw her face for the first time, and she quietly asked what he thought. A little embarrassed, she urged him to say something. MC was left speechless. Then he apologized and blurted out that she was beautiful. He remembered that even the Countess had never shown her face before, which made this moment hit even harder. Then Walpurgis said she had something for him. She handed him the Barnes family treasure, an heirloom given to her by her uncle. Han asked why she was giving him something so precious. Walpurgis explained that it was a keepsake. So long as he had it, a part of her would always stay with him. He was touched, realizing she wanted him to remember her always. He promised to protect the treasure well. Smiling, she told him to make sure he kept that promise. Then Han said goodbye and explained that he had to go. "You go first," the protagonist says, but Walpurgis tells him to leave first instead. For a moment, they keep playfully pushing it back and forth. In the end, they finally say a real goodbye. Later, MC Jejiwoo looks back on everything and thinks getting close to Walpurgis might not be a bad path after all. But then, a nasty smell cuts his thoughts short. He finds several dead warriors, and quickly figures out Philip and Pessimut fought there. That tells Han Jiawo he's following the right trail. He casts a scan spell over the whole area and finds something useful. Power surges through him as he uses a necromancer skill, raising the corpses into undead servants loyal to him. Han Jiawo gives them their first order. Search the area for any sign of Philip. Then he points at one female undead. She's got a different job. he tells her to gather every scattered military uniform since they'll come in handy later. Meanwhile, in a town near the battlefield, Philip is hiding with a few soldiers. He still can't get over his uncle betraying him, and now he wants revenge. A little later, Philip grabs some food, even though one of his men warns him it's meant for emergencies. He ignores that completely and thinks only about himself. Then someone shows up saying he's been looking for him. The newcomer introduces himself as the mercenary Valor and asks, "Do you remember me, Prince?" Philip knows him at once, while one soldier urges him to stay careful because they're still in danger. Already irritated, Philip hits the soldier. He insists the mercenary came to save him, since he hired him before. Philip sneers that those useless worms can't compare to Valorstead. Now that a famous war hero is with him, he says he doesn't need the others anymore and dismisses them. Then Philip rushes over, almost begging to be saved. Han Joel plays along, saying he's glad he finally found his majesty. After searching the whole forest, Philip nearly cries from relief and promises a huge reward once they get back. He just says that won't be needed. At once, his undead servants attack Philip's men. Philip has no idea what's going on. Han Jiwoo coldly tells him he didn't come for money. He came to settle things with the prince. Philip is completely blindsided. He snaps that a pup like the protagonist doesn't know what it means to fear a tiger, then says he must have been feeding a stray all this time. MC doesn't back down at all. He even barks like a dog to mock him. Furious, Philip pulls out his moonlit sword and cuts into some of the undead. Han Jiwoo expected he wouldn't go down quietly, but every ally Philip calls on drains more of his mana. So he orders the undead to fall back. Philip brags that beating those minions was easy. The protagonist Jiwoo tells him the real fight will be different. He says he saved something special just for the prince. Then the two finally clash. Philip attacks in pure rage, burning with anger over the betrayal. Meanwhile, Han Jiwoo is facing the one enemy he prepared for the most. He realizes this is the Elector's sword style, the very swordsmanship he once used and admired. That makes this fight sting even more. The style looks graceful and beautiful, but behind that old-fashioned charm is a deadly counterattack ready to strike. Only the Steel Elector is supposed to wield that blade. Philip shouts, asking if Han really thinks he can betray him and still live peacefully. MC Jiwoo answers calmly that he actually gets along pretty well with the nuns. Philip is shocked a mere mercenary has ties like that, but he quickly says he's not afraid of armed religious groups. Philip charges again, but Han Jiwoo blocks him easily. That only makes Philip angrier. On top of that, the old internal wounds from his fight with the vampire demon are still hurting him. He tells him his little tragedy act ends here. Right after that, he drives a hard kick into Philip. The hit is so strong it makes the prince cough up blood. Han Jiwoo says Philip should fear him, not the nuns. Philip stammers that he's only losing because his body is still weakened from the earlier battle. He reminds the protagonist that he once noticed his talent and rewarded him, so why is he trying to kill him now? MC Jiwoo fires back that Philip is even stupider than he thought, but since he still doesn't get it, he'll spell it out. First, Philip ignored Han's warning that someone close to him would betray him. Second, he threw Valpurgis away after all her loyal service. Third, he let countless others die instead of himself. Because of all that, he says Philip should be ashamed to call himself an elector. Cornered, Philip argues that everything he did was for his people. If he dies, who will feed the citizens left behind? He also says the other electors will attack the moment they hear he's dead. Han Jiwoo admits that's a fair point, so he offers Philip one chance. If Philip agrees to his condition, the protagonist says he'll give him a healing potion. Desperate to survive, Philip accepts right away. Any condition is fine if he gets to live. MC Jiwoo gives the order. Get on your knees and beg Valpurgis for forgiveness. Philip agrees at once and even promises to donate 10,000 florins to the House of Byron. Han then hands him the bottle and tells him to drink all of it. Philip takes a swallow, then lets the rest spill onto the ground. He mockingly asks if he didn't like the taste, then reveals the truth. It was never a healing potion, it was dragon poison. Once he realizes he was fooled, Philip's face twists with rage. Han tells him to thank Hex, since the poison came straight from her own stash. In desperation, Philip tries to strike back, but he's taken down before he can land a hit. And the one who drops him isn't the protagonist, it's an old ally. Philip stares in shock as he recognizes Piffenheim. The last time he saw her, zombie dogs were tearing into her. Piffenheim says that after he left her to die, her new master brought her back and gave her another chance. Now she has no reason to stay loyal to the prince. She admits she never liked his arrogance anyway, and now it's time for him to pay for his sins. Just before Philip dies, Han Jawa's system warns that losing the Iron Elector could throw the game off course. MC can't believe someone this disgusting matters that much to the game. Even so, sparing him never crosses his mind. He'll deal with the fallout later. So he allows Piffenheim to finish her revenge. Just like the system warned, error messages start going off right away. Even knowing things just got harder, Han Jawa doesn't regret it. Far above, Aquila watches everything happening inside the game. She notes that the protagonist really did break a seal, and from the look on his face, he's overflowing with confidence and excitement. Aquila loves it. She wants to see him cause even more chaos. To her, this is only the start. Han Jawa thinks that as expected from an elector, Philip gave amazing rewards. On top of that, leveling up earned him 2 S-class skills only he can get. But item-wise, only one thing dropped. At first glance, it looks like an ordinary magic amulet. But when MC tries to inspect it more closely, a barrier pushes him back. So he decides to take it to Margareta and have her unlock it for him. After that, his system sends another alert, this time about a transcendent being. That means he'll need to be very careful when he goes after it. Hanjawaz wants to become a transcendent being himself one day. To do that, he has to beat powerful enemies and use them as steps toward his final goal. Just then, Piffenheim arrives and says she has something important for her master. She checked the traces left by Philip's men and found an item. Hanjawaz thinks this must be the mission's real reward. The glow alone makes it clear. Then he asks if she handled the other job too. Piffenheim says she did. She dressed Philip's dead men in Pessimo faction uniforms, so it would look like demons killed them. Amid all that, one man is still alive, begging desperately for mercy and saying he'll do anything. He doesn't recognize him until Piffenheim explains that he's one of Philip's surviving followers. She asks her master what should be done with him. Watching the soldier cry like a baby, Hanjawa says he'll send Pessimo a little gift and hopes he enjoys it. Sometime after the protagonist leaves, Lawrence, captain of an army fleet, passes through the area and finds the bodies. One of his men confirms they belong to Pessimut's soldiers. They also say they found one survivor from Philip's side. Lawrence questions the man and learns that both the prince and an important item were taken. The survivor claims a Pessimut attack scattered them, and they were cornered while trying to escape. Lawrence narrows his eyes. He asks if the man really expects him to believe he was the only one to live through an attack that killed everyone else. The survivor nervously says yes and starts trying to explain, but Lawrence only sighs and says he wishes he had arrived in time to find Philip. Then he tells the man he risked his life to protect his leaders and upheld a true knight's duty. With that, Lawrence speaks to all his troops, saying this survivor stayed loyal to his commander until the very end. Even in danger, he says, the man never broke his knightly spirit. Lawrence calls him an example for them all, then orders everyone to continue the search for Prince Philip. Later, at the Palace of Roses, Lawrence gives his report, saying he searched for Philip, but all he found were a few traces, no sign of the prince himself. His superior guesses the item is missing too, since Philip would never leave behind something that important. Lawrence immediately blames Pizzamat, and Roland says she's getting tired of hearing that name. The captain quickly apologizes, but Rose says the item matters most. It's the only way Philip can regain his place as an elector. Roland says Philip isn't the type to die that easily, then orders a servant to send Pizzamat a message demanding the item back. If he refuses, she says with a grin, things are about to get interesting. At Pizzamat's base, he receives the message and is instantly terrified. That mad woman has come back to life. The woman he means is Margarita, someone even a demon like Pizzamat fears. He was the one who cursed her and put her into a coma. His servant tried to brush it off, saying she was only human. Pizzamat shut that down right away. He growled that Margarita once stormed Off's hideout by herself and wiped out all his men. What made it worse was how brutally she did it. And the whole thing started because one of them stepped on her snack. After that, demons started calling Margarita the destructive storm. Then another servant rushed in with a message from Queen Roland. Pezimut groaned that the timing couldn't be worse. He already had more than enough to deal with. But once he read the letter, he had no clue what Roland was even talking about. He didn't know anything about the item she wanted. That made Pezimut lose it. Now some madwoman was after him, demanding an item he didn't even know existed. His servant tried to figure it out. They hadn't stolen any item, and they had even lost Hexax while chasing Philip. The servant said the whole thing felt off. Margarita waking up. The missing item, all of it pointed to some outcome, but the real cause was still unclear. So he started to wonder if someone in the shadows was connecting all these events. He wasn't far off. He just didn't know Han Jawo was the one behind it. Around then, MC Jawo suddenly sneezed, and his companion asked if he was getting sick. He said no, he just caught a weird smell. As they traveled, Piffenheim asked what he planned to do with Philip's body, but the protagonist still hadn't decided. His mind was on something else. He now had the Golden Imperial document. With that and Philip's corpse, he figured he could pull off something huge. In his eyes, he basically held the world in his hands now. Piffenheim was thrilled and wished her master a long, successful life. Later on, a group of friends was on their way home. They were so excited they planned to drink themselves silly at the first tavern they found. Then an arrow suddenly hit one of them and ruined everything. His friend could only watch him go down. Bandits had jumped their carriage from the woods. Still, the victims fought back. They wanted payback for their fallen friend. A fight broke out almost at once. The bandit boss mocked the merchants, saying they were making a fortune selling goods back to Roland. The merchant snapped back that the bandit had no idea who he was dealing with, but the bandit didn't care. He knocked the merchant's weapon away and trapped him. Then he started mocking him, telling him to go cry to Valpurgis for help and bring her uncle too if he wanted. Meanwhile, Valpurgis was sharing a quiet moment with Han Jae-woo. She noticed a mark on his face and leaned in to wipe it off. That was when Margarita suddenly burst in, frantically searching for him. Her sudden entrance startled both of them, and even Margarita froze. It was the first time she'd seen Valpurgis without her helmet. After she calmed down and got some water, Margarita said the sight had nearly given her a heart attack. She couldn't get over how beautiful Valpurgis was, then warned Han Jae-woo to treat her well. If he messed things up with a girl like that, she said she'd tear him in half. Then Margarita switched topics and asked about Philip's death. MC Jae-woo said he beat Philip and left the body with one of his subordinates. But Margarita said that was a problem. She wanted to be the one to finish Philip herself. Seeing how furious she was, Han Jae-woo quietly thought Philip was probably lucky he died before meeting her. To calm her down, he said he had a gift. He pulled out a pouch of money and said it used to belong to the prince. Now it was hers, and with that much cash, she could buy all the food she wanted. Margarita instantly called him a saint of kindness and said she liked him even more now. Meanwhile, Valpurgis noticed a stack of papers and asked what they were. Once she read them, she realized they were letters meant for Philip, messages about Roland's plan to make him the next emperor. Han Jae-woo explained that the current emperor and Roland were already at odds over money. Margarita added that trade blockades were making things worse. The emperor had started seizing goods from every merchant guild tied to Roland. Nearby cavalry units were furious, and that's why House Raeder attacked the Ignis Merchant Guild. Because of all this, Margarita revealed that Valpurgis was under huge mental pressure. Valpurgis never wanted Han Jae-woo to hear about any of it. But the protagonist Jae-woo pressed her, asking what was really going on. With no way around it, his friend agreed to tell him everything. A little later, MC finally understood how messy this situation really was. He never expected the Emperor's blockade to grow into such a huge clash with the Elector of Byron. While he was still thinking it over, Valpurgis came to see him. She said she wished he could forget what he'd heard earlier. She didn't want to pull him into her family's problems. Han Jae-woo refused to ignore it. He told her he wanted to help with whatever she needed. Even then, Valpurgis said this was far too big for him to step into. She promised she'd ask other allies for help and told him not to worry. He knew Valpurgis was capable, but he still felt she lacked experience and was too soft-hearted, so he tried to reassure her. He said he understood this was too big for an ordinary mercenary, but he still wouldn't stand by and do nothing. No matter what, he wanted to help, and he said mercenaries could still be useful. That made her smile. Even at a time like this, she appreciated that he could still joke around. Still, Han Jae-woo said he was actually pretty confident. Valpurgis didn't really get what he meant. The next day, the protagonist Jae-woo got up unusually early and went straight to the convent. He headed right for Margarita's room, then he barged in without warning, and caught her in the middle of eating, almost making her choke. Han Jae-woo didn't want to waste time. He told her he had taken a magic item from Philip, but he couldn't open it, which instantly got the High Abbess interested. He said if she could open it right away, he'd give her a reward. Margarita agreed on the spot and opened the item. Soon after, Han Jae-woo noticed a pair of gloves and asked what they did. Margarita said they were an upgraded version of the magic zipper she had just opened. Now she could pull out items whenever she wanted, with just a flick of her hand. After moving off on his own, MC admitted he'd never seen anything like that and wondered if the game had gotten some kind of update. He actually thought it was a good thing, but his thoughts got cut off when he reached for a drink of water. He asked his horse why it had suddenly stopped. Then Han Jae-woo realized he had arrived in Plusen, and the whole city was in the middle of a huge festival. After forcing his way through the crowd, Jae-woo finally let out a cheer. It felt like he'd been stuck in a theme park for 3 hours, but at last he made it out of the packed crowd. In the middle of all that noise, he noticed someone holding a welcome sign. Han Jae-woo thought the place looked just like he remembered. People were waiting excitedly for someone they called the Great One. He reflected that Plusen was a city where many races lived together, and the Great One they meant was the Demon King Cobalt. Cobalt had helped unite different cultures with his knowledge and the way he spoke. After Roland, he was seen as the Demon King most friendly to humans, and he might be a key ally in the current crisis, so Han Jae-woo was set on meeting him no matter what. While thinking that over, someone walked up to him and said he had the presence of a great adventurer. The stranger claimed he could feel the protagonist's strength from a distance. MC checked his system to see what the goblin meant. That's when he noticed he had an SS rank fit for a great leader and a trait that let him strongly influence even strangers. Realizing that, Han Jae-woo said he wanted to meet Cobalt. The goblin lit up and said it was exciting that the city would welcome 2 powerful guests at the same time. He added that he also had business with Cobalt and would gladly guide him there. Not long after, they reached Cobalt's castle. The goblin asked him to wait in reception and enjoy some tea while he went to announce him. The protagonist Jae-woo found it strange that a simple goblin could tell his level at a glance, but he chose not to think too hard about it yet. In the room, he noticed a statue of the castle's master, and briefly thought he might have to hunt him down one day. A little later, the goblin came back and asked if the adventurer was enjoying the tea. Han Jae-woo said yes, but firmly told him to announce himself next time before sneaking up like that. Then he changed the topic and asked how the goblin ended up working for Cobalt. The goblin answered that his bond with Cobalt was built on immeasurable love. Hearing that, MC Jae-woo started thinking. He remembered that everyone in the city called Cobalt the Great One, yet this goblin spoke about him much more casually. Then Han Jae-woo noticed a ring on the goblin's finger and asked if he was married. The goblin laughed and said he had sharp eyes, adding that he had spent 10 years of salary to buy that ring. That's when he called him by his real name, Cobalt. He said it took him a while, but he had finally seen through the act. That ring gave it away, since it was the ruby ring Cobalt treasured most. The goblin's overly familiar behavior from the start had also made Han Jae-woo suspicious. Most of all, he pointed out that this goblin was the only one who didn't call Cobalt the Great One. With no point hiding it anymore, Cobalt revealed himself. In his true form, Cobalt said he knew he was standing before the famous Wallerstedt Valor. Then he formally introduced himself as the Law of Plusen City. He added that Han Jae-woo had probably come to talk about Valpurgis. The protagonist Zhao Wu confirmed it, saying he hoped to get important clues or information from Cobalt. Cobalt admitted he wasn't eager to help, but said he would share everything MC needed if one condition was met. He had expected that, so he immediately asked what the condition was. Even before hearing it, he already knew Cobalt's hunger for knowledge had been obvious for a long time, and Han Jiawu had rare information, half the details of future wars plus even real estate secrets, so of course he was curious about what Cobalt would ask for. To the protagonist's surprise, Cobalt asked for something simple. He wants to be friends with Valorstead. Cobalt says Valor has become famous lately, especially after taking down Hexax. On top of that, he's gotten close to the Empire's most well-known paladin. People are even spreading rumors that Valor and Valpurgis are involved. Because of all that, Cobalt wants ties with Valor. Sure, it will help him later. Han asks why he should become Cobalt's friend. In response, Cobalt gives him a ring and says it's a communication tool. With it, they can talk even from far away. MC doesn't like the idea of being friends with someone like Cobalt, but Cobalt says that as a sign of their new friendship, he'll share everything Valor wants to know. To prove it, he gives him an important lead, a clue hidden in the capital of the Duchy of Saxon. That capital is Dresden. Using Cobalt's tip, Han heads for Dresden. The guards try to stop him at the gate, but he just shows them his system screen. That alone scares them badly. Han warns them not to block his path again. Once inside, he walks through the city with the screen still out for everyone to see. The moment people notice it, they drop to their knees. They're terrified he might strike them down. He thinks this may be the easiest mission he's had in a while. He quickly reaches the Merchants Guild. Inside, a woman warns that an unknown man is coming toward the guild, and he looks extremely dangerous. A moment later, Han walks in and shocks her by openly showing his system screen. After that, he comes face to face with the guild leader. The man immediately asks why someone like him came here. Han closes the system window and says he wants to make a deal with the head of the Merchants Guild. Earlier, Cobalt had already told the protagonist what he knew about Dresden. He said the city's merchant guild and the Ritter family were buried in debt, locked in a heavy debtor-creditor mess. MC had no clue about any of this before. Just like he expected, Cobalt knew almost everything. He'd beaten Han in information battles many times before, and his spy network reached across the whole continent. That's why Cobalt was called the King of Shadows. Seeing his reaction, Cobalt could tell the information pleased him, but he still had more to share. Back in the present, Han stands with the guild leader, who begins talking about his daughter. He explains that she now spends her days stuck in bed. Not long ago, Marin was a normal child. Then one day, her arms grew too weak to even lift a fork. Soon, the weakness spread through her whole body. Her father brought in the best doctors he could find, even experts from outside the city, but nothing worked. Watching his daughter waste away has filled him with regret and pain. Even so, he still hasn't given up on saving her, so he begs the famed adventurer to help his daughter. Han first tells him to just call him Valor. Then he says he came to make a deal. Looking Marin over, Valor can tell her condition is very serious. Her muscles have badly weakened, and her body is severely underfed. He decides normal treatment won't save her. Still, there is one way to cure her. Her father quickly asks what he needs to do. Han says he needs an elixir from Schwarzteufel, but the father answers that this makes her rescue almost impossible. His reaction shows he knows exactly how dangerous that place is, which is why he thinks the protagonist's request can't be done. Schwarzteufel is a canyon in the Empire's southeast. Even though it's beautiful, it's known as the home of the terrifying demonic dragon Schwarzteufel. Only a few ancient dragons are left on the continent, and Schwarzteufel is so powerful that even demon kings avoid him. The canyon is packed with beasts and demons, making it deadly for anyone who enters. For normal people, it's hopeless, but Han is anything but normal. He calmly assures the guild leader of that and says he'll get the elixir himself. That gives the man a little hope, though he still fears no one comes back alive from Schwarzteufel. Han adds that what Marin needs most right now isn't the elixir, it's her father's love. Touched by that, the man asks why Valor is helping him. MC says he heard about the Ritter family's debt to the Merchants Guild. If he saves Marin, he wants her father to erase that debt. The guild leader is stunned by the offer, but the chance to see his daughter healthy again is too great to refuse, so he promises to keep his word if Marin is cured. Sometime later, Han reaches Schwarzteufel. He likes the moonlit view and the cool air. Then he notices rare plants growing nearby. He points out that flowers like these can be turned into special medicine. He even tells his horse not to eat them. The place is so dangerous that guards are posted around it to keep people out. Still, Han gets them to let only him pass. He knows that even the grass here is soaked in dragon mana, which means almost everything in this canyon has medical value. To Han, even the dirt here is basically treasure. So he starts gathering every useful plant he can find. Anything extra could be sold for good money after he cures the guild leader's daughter. He also plans to keep some for himself and use them in battle. But while collecting them, he suddenly gets hit in the head by a rock. A goblin steps out and orders him to leave. It isn't alone either. An entire goblin force appears and claims this land doesn't belong to humans. Sometime later, under Han's command, those same goblins are now digging up the ground for him. When he sees one doing it badly, the protagonist snaps at it. Dig carefully, or you'll damage the roots. If you keep messing this up, I'll send all of you back to the grave. Still irritated, Han asks if they understood him. Earlier, before things turned out like this, those goblins had attacked him first. MC answered by using his power to drain their blood, wiping them out in a single blow. Even dead though, they were still useful. Han used his skill again, bringing their bodies back and turning them into zombie goblins. That way he didn't have to do all the planting work alone. Back in the present, he remarks that they never should have attacked when they had no chance. Kurrock, his servant Kurrock, bows and says the goblins failed to see Han's greatness, then thanks him for taking them in as servants. The protagonist laughs and says he should be the thankful one since they're working so hard. Then he asks who else lives in these canyons besides goblins. Kurrock quickly answers that the canyon is full of monsters, werewolves, worms, giant centipedes, and plenty of ogres too. MC notes that his new servant really memorized everything and says keeping him around was a smart choice. Kurrock calls it an honor to serve him. Suddenly, he hears a voice from the ring. It's Kubalt, asking if he forgot the ring was for communication. Han admits he did, then asks what Kubalt wants to talk about. Kubalt asks how things are going in Shretstufel. The protagonist casually replies that the water is nice, the air is fresh, and the moonlight looks great. Kubalt says Pleasant is also getting lively, as people prepare for a festival, and invites Han to come if he has time. But the real reason for the call, he says, is that Valpurgis recently visited Ritter. Just like Valor expected, they demanded a ridiculous settlement fee. They also threatened to seize the goods meant for trade with Roland. In short, it was completely one-sided and unfair. MC says they've crossed the line, but Kubalt warns this is only the start. Kubalt says he wishes Valpurgis would be more reasonable, but he insists she would never agree to those terms and tells Kubalt to stall for time. Kubalt agrees, saying he'll do it for their friendship. Han promises to repay the favor next time they meet. Kubalt sounds pleased. Since Schwarzerteufel is a gold mine, he's clearly expecting a good gift. Then hearing all the noise around the protagonist, Kubalt says he must be busy and ends the call. MC is relieved the conversation is finally over. He was only putting up with Kubalt because of Valpurgis. But just when he thinks he might rest, Kurrock rushes over and says they have a problem. Han then sees several monsters approaching. A pack of ogres has come to greet him. He tells Kurrock to get back. He realizes the goblins under his control have already been wiped out. After checking the ogres, he sees that his blood-draining skill won't work on them, and bringing the goblins back into the fight is pointless. They can't handle ogres, so Han decides he'll have to fight himself. He pours power into his magic and calls forth Rablania, one of the Empire's 12 legendary swords, the unbreakable treasure of House Paltz. The ogres react the moment they see the blade. Han says they recognized his weapon, and of course they did. Rablania is famous for lighting up the darkness. He even mocks Philip for owning something like this without understanding its power. Now fully armed, the protagonist attacks. After cutting down the first ogre, he rushes the others and moves to surround them. He's so fast they can't even track him. He strikes from blind spots and toys with them at the same time. Before the ogres can respond, Han cuts them down without giving them a single chance to fight back. Afterward, he admits he wasn't even sure he could pull off that move before the battle. Now that he's seen the result, he quietly praises himself, and it's not just MC who's impressed. His new servant is amazed too. Han said this was nothing compared to how strong he used to be. But a second later, something caught him off guard. A creature lunged at him and barked. "What do you think you're doing?" He had no idea where it came from. Before he could react, it already had him by the throat. Furious, it growled, "I'll break your neck." For the first time in a while, Han was facing someone on his level. Then his opponent hurled him away like he weighed nothing. After taking that hit, the protagonist knew this enemy was the real deal. One strike alone took 10% of his life. The enemy looked impressed. "You're strong. Who are you?" Han fired back. "You should go first." With a smug look, she answered, "I'm the master of Grousglockner." MC froze. The demon dragon? He never expected her to look like this. He'd pictured something more like a normal dragon. She moved in closer and studied him. Something about him felt off. His life force was from another world. Kurrock quickly stepped in front of Han. "I'll protect my master," but she snapped that she was sick of their pride and disrespect. She made it clear she'd kill them on the spot. He cut in and told her to listen first. She wasn't interested, so Han threw out a shocking line. "If I die, you die too." That made her stop. Demanding answers, she pressed him to explain. The protagonist said he sometimes sees the future in dreams, and in one of those dreams he saw her die a brutal death. It sounded hard to believe, so MC challenged her. If she doubted him, she could read his memories herself. She reached for his head, and one of her claws nicked him by accident. After a pause, she said she'd test it, but if he was lying, he was dead. Then she pulled her claws back and focused on entering Han's mind. The instant she got in, something felt very wrong. What she found was a wild flood of things she couldn't understand at all. His voice rang through her mind. "Ignore that and look at what matters." Even so, her curiosity kept dragging her toward the other memories, so Han quickly forced the exact vision he wanted her to see. She found that suspicious, but inside his mind she didn't have many options. A moment later, she saw herself in her true dragon form. That was when she knew the protagonist had told the truth. Just that one scene was enough. Shocked, she pulled herself out of his mind. Han let out a quiet sigh of relief. She almost saw too much. Still shaken, the demon dragon muttered, Who could possibly kill me?" Then she said she'd leave him alone and allow him to move freely through the mountains. MC stopped her there. He wanted to make a deal. First, he said her name was too long, so he'd call her Shubi from now on. She clearly hated that. Han told Shubi she could survive, but she was more offended by the nickname, reminding him she was thousands of years old. He ignored that and told her to hear him out. Right then, his system popped up with a new mission: earn the dragon's trust. Difficulty high. Some time later, a snake slid through the trees and got crushed under a passing foot. Its owner proudly announced, "I am the ruler of the deep abyss, the king of chaos and disorder, Odgash the Demon King." He had barely finished that dramatic speech when one of his servants reminded him they were almost there and couldn't stop now. Odgash brushed him off, saying this was his grand entrance. He hated being interrupted. The servant apologized at once, but Odgash had already lost interest. He told him to forget it, since the mood was ruined anyway. Then a woman showed up and coldly said that servant belonged to her, not to the Demon King. Odgash just laughed. "Ah, Calione, you're finally here, my daughter." He reminded her that if this campaign ended well, he'd grant her greatest wish. Even when Calione said she didn't need that, Odgash only smiled. As her father, he said, it was natural for him to do it. Then he turned to his forces and explained that Grossglockner was guarded by the Demon Dragon. Her beasts weren't a big problem, but the Demon Dragon herself would be a tough enemy. Even so, he told them not to fear. All they had to do was devour everything around them and trample every living creature without mercy. With him leading them, Odgash roared. Victory was certain. Once his twisted children were fired up enough, he finally marched toward the target. Back with Han, he gathers his servants. He says that even with weird monsters and a dragon who's hard to talk to getting in the way, their goal is still to gather as many valuable herbs as they can and take them back to Dresden. So he orders the goblins to get back to work. After that speech, Kuruk brings his master a mandragora drink. As Han drinks it, he thinks about how dangerous this sudden meeting with a dragon would have been if he didn't still have memories from past runs. Still, this run feels very different from the others. Philip acted differently. The dragon looked different, and on top of that, Valpurgis finally showed the protagonist her face. That pushes him to check a few things through his system, and as he suspected, this isn't the first sign that something has changed. Everything that's happened so far is different from the last run, so Han realizes the future may be completely different too. He knows nearly every map in Grossglockner by heart, down to every stone. That's why it makes no sense for him to be confused about where the dragon appears. Something is definitely off. The battle for Harfame between the Steel Elector and Pahamut, Friedrich's betrayal, the Steel Elector's support, and the crisis at Valpurgis Grand Convent. The main story points are the same, but the events around them are different. Han feels like he's missing one key detail. His thoughts get cut off when the goblins start making noise. MC turns to see what happened. One goblin says he only got hurt while picking plants. Han warns them to be careful. Some roots are dangerous, which is why he already taught them the right way to pull the herbs out. Then he tries to think again, but notices something. It's a small detail he's only seen in this run. That's when it hits him. As every event in this run flashes through his mind, he realizes that once his position changed, his point of view changed too. Before, he was the Steel Elector, the ruler of an empire, even the hero who saved the world. He had the power to match those names. Now he's only a plain mercenary. Compared to his past selves, he has almost nothing left except his memories. But this time, Han also did something differently. He built real ties with people who used to be nothing more than NPCs to him. Even seeing Valpurgis's face made this run feel worth it. In an earlier run, the protagonist would have just paid off Valpurgis's debt and left. He never knew the full story back then. As he keeps thinking, Han finally realizes the changes began after he met Aquila. More exactly, it started when she gave him the missing clue needed to find the game's true ending. A new hidden space was created, and with it, a new version of himself. Now it all starts to click. MC believes Aquila is behind everything. Seeing his master act strange, Kururak asks if the drink tastes bad. Before Han can answer, a loud crash sounds nearby. Shubi appears. She says everything he told her was true. The protagonist answers that it's all thanks to Aquila, though the demon dragon has no idea what he means. He goes on, saying Aquila has made this game even more interesting than before. Shubi admits she still doesn't understand a word he's saying. Han doesn't care. He declares that he'll show Aquila he knows how to enjoy this world. From now on, he'll do whatever he wants, because a new strategy starts now. Everyone watching him is left completely confused. Meanwhile, Odgash is tearing through everything around him, showing off just how overwhelming his power is. His whole army cheers and praises his strength. Then his daughter suddenly senses something coming. Odgash wonders if it's the demon dragon, but when he first looks over, he only sees a human and a goblin. He scoffs at that until his daughter points out they aren't alone. A huge roar follows, and Odgash's eyes light up. At last, the one he was waiting for has arrived. Shubi glares at Odgash and his army, ordering them to leave her land. Odgash says he's been waiting a long time for this moment and came here for her. He even offers her a deal, but Shubi shuts him down right away. She looks to Han and gets his signal. That's all she needs. She gets ready to fight and dares him to attack. Only then does Odgash realize he'd been talking to himself. She hadn't listened to a single word. Shubi suddenly grabs Odgash and carries him off, leaving the rest to MC. Han expected Odgash to invade, but not this early. He could just ignore him, but then he sees the Demon King's side. And standing there is Lady Calione, the greatest beauty on the continent. For him, that's reason enough to pay attention. She takes off her helmet and steps forward at the head of her troops. The moment Han sees her, he remembers something important. Depending on the player's choices, Calione is one of the most dangerous characters in the game. She can become either ally or enemy, and she's even stronger than Bahamut. There's a reason they call her the Ice Queen. The protagonist decides he has to recruit her for his future plans no matter what. So he takes his chance and tells Calione she's even prettier in person. That immediately earns him a spear at his throat. Both Calione and one of her servants threaten him, and Han answers with dry sarcasm. He says he wants to speak with the princess and asks if they can set up a meeting. Her servant gets furious and attacks him. Worried about MC, Kerr jumps in first. Han can't help thinking his favorite goblin is absurdly loyal. Jack tells the enemy that if they want his master, they'll have to go through him first. He notices this is nothing like the Kurgrak who ran away alone during Shubi's attack. As the fight starts, the protagonist taunts the princess, saying his servant is more loyal than hers. Then a whip snaps forward and wraps around the enemy completely. On the other side stands Hexax, a vampire under Han's control. MC had been saving her for the perfect moment, and this was it. He sends his servant in first, but Hexax isn't the only one joining the fight. Piffenheim steps in too. She swears she'll cut down anyone who tries to harm her master. Calione quickly realizes Han can control vampires like they're nothing. He has a whole army of the Reborn behind him. Calione answers with a huge force of monsters. She admits her enemy has some very powerful allies. Still, she says Lord Ojash's demon troops stand with her. Then Calione gives the order to attack. No survivors. The moment she says it, her side rushes in. Han's Reborn servants charge too, and their masters jump into the battle right away. They collide at once. Calione drives the protagonist back. She says very few can stop her strikes, and that puts him above Bahamut. Han says it's an honor to hear that from the princess. Then he says it's a shame she's serving Ojgash, and if her real father knew, he'd cry tears of blood. MC knows she's Lady Calione. Raminia Kaimars, the only daughter of the former first-rank demon lord Kaimars. Calione narrows her eyes and asks what else he knows. Han starts laughing, and she snaps, asking what's so funny. He says it's ridiculous that she's become so blind, she's following the one who helped bring down her own father. That shocks Calione. Confused, she demands an explanation. To her, her father was the person she respected most. His warm eyes always gave her peace and made other demons believe in themselves too. She was proud of him. He was her happiness. Then he died, and everything fell apart. Kamars was killed by Gorakalgam and Kaltus. After that, Odgash took her in. He claimed he hated those demons just as much as she did. He said Lord Kamars had been his true master and even his best friend, then spoke of a new beginning. He promised that one day, he would help her get revenge. Back in the present, Calione is furious to hear Han insult Odgash. He tells her she's in a terrible spot, but before she says anything else, he asks her to look at something. He throws an energy sphere to Calione. At the same time, Odgash faces the demon dragon, and says romance is the only answer. To him, this whole mess is some twisted love story. Shubi fires back, accusing him of ruining Calione's life. Odgash says he didn't kill Kaimars, that Gorakalgam and Cultus did. Shubi mocks that excuse. She already knows the truth. Odgash calls her stubborn, then finally gives in. He admits she's right. Those two fools could never have killed Kaimars on their own. At last, he reveals what really happened. He says that once those two learned he knew Kaimars' one weakness, they jumped at the chance. What he doesn't realize is that Calione is hearing every word. The sphere Han gave her is an image transmitter, and the truth leaves her stunned. Since her father's death, she had treated Odgash like family. The protagonist sees that his plan is working. Earlier, he set this up with Shubi, and the magic projector came from her. He asked her to use it during the fight so Odgash would confess while battling her. Shubi didn't get why it mattered, but Han insisted the plan needed it. Now Calione stops fighting, lost in what she just heard. MC thinks to himself that Shubi followed the plan perfectly. The rest depends on him now. In tears, Calione says everything she believed was just an act from Odgash. She remembers that he'd been beside her since she was a child. Hexen then says her job here is finished. Han tells her to stay where she is. Broken, Calione says she never thought she'd spent 50 years obeying her real enemy. The truth crushes her. He tells her not to drown in grief. She can still take the revenge she's wanted all this time. He offers to teach her Kaimars' right of the true name, and says what she does with it will be her choice. Calione gasps. It's been a long time since she heard that name. It's a spell that draws on the power of the cosmos, strong enough to injure even an archdemon. That magic is what made her father the greatest demon lord, but she says only he knew its secrets, so how could Han possibly know it? The protagonist thinks about the strategy guide. He studied Kaimars inside and out. He knows the power of the right, the true name, and even Kaimars' one fatal weakness. But right now, he only needs a story that will convince her. So he says he read the Chronicles of the Seven Demon Wars, which recorded ways to resist the Archdemon, including Kaimars' right of the true name. Calione admits that explanation makes sense. Han is pleased for a second, but then she says she still can't help him kill Odgash because Odgash is immortal. She explains that even before becoming her father's follower, Odgash was hit directly by that spell and went down for a while. but Kaimar still couldn't finish him. MC says she's wrong. Then he points out that the ones guarding her are part of his vampire army. No matter how strong she is, she can't fight all of them by herself. So Han offers her a new path, follow him or die here. That hits Calione hard, and she remembers being a child. Back then, she told her father she wanted to grow up into a great demon lord like him. He said that if she meant it, she'd have to become even stronger than he was. She asked if that was really possible. He told her yes, because he believed in her. She was his daughter. Back in the present, crying, she asks Han if she really can defeat Odgash. He doesn't get why she's asking through tears, and even his allies are surprised. But Piffenheim points out that by demon standards, Calione is still just a child. Kurorak, meanwhile, wonders if his master forgot about the other problem. Not far away, Odgash is still fighting Shubi. Even against such a strong enemy, he feels no strain at all and says he expected more. Shubi only sneers at him. Her job is to keep him busy, but Odgash hates that she's avoiding a straight clash. He had even expected her to accept his offer. Instead of joining him, Shubi rejects Odgash and blasts him with dragon breath. Even that isn't enough to bring him down. Odgash is stronger than she expected. He blocks the attack and fires back, completely sure of himself. If it's a fight you want, he says, he'll give her one. Then he bursts forward at insane speed and slams Shubi into the ground. After taking the hit, Shubi swears she'll make him pay. She shifts into her true form and attacks in full dragon shape. The impact shakes the earth. Nearby, Han warns Kurek to watch his step. Hexax watches them and thinks it's adorable. She sees the goblin like the protagonist's pet. Piffenheim comes to MC and says Shubi's mana is surging so much, she's even breaking past her polymorph. Even so, he wonders if Lady Shubi can really endure an enemy like this. Han points out that fighting in Grossglockner puts a huge burden on Shubi. Then he gets an idea. He calls out to Calione and says he has an important job for her. Does she accept? She answers without hesitation. Nearby, Odgash keeps trading brutal blows with the dragon. Shubi tries to land a hit, but Odgash gives her no room at all. He boasts that he's loving this contest of strength. Shubi breathes fire again, and Odgash blocks it with ease. Seeing that, Shubi pushes even harder, and finally lands a heavy strike that actually hurts him. But Odgash says it's still not enough and demands more, hungry for battle. Shubi calls him arrogant and says she isn't even fighting at full power yet. If she did, she warns, a collapsing planet would look small next to her attacks. Odgash doesn't care. He says he has more tricks too. Then he swings his axe at Shubi. The blow launches her away and tears through everything around them. After that, Odgash mocks her, saying he never thought a demon dragon would be this pathetic or this easy to beat. That hit forces Shubi back into her weaker form. As Odgash walks up, he says he finally understands why she's weak. She's bound to this place. He wants to know why, but instead of answering, Shubi just insults him. Odgash says she's stubborn to the end, and now she'll die. But before he can strike Shubi, Han appears and stops him cold with a hit of his own. Shubi lets out a relieved breath and says he finally showed up, though he's late. He shoots back that she looks terrible, which Shubi clearly does not enjoy hearing. Odgash gets back up and demands to know what happened to Calione. Han only says he'll see soon enough. Then he gives the girl a signal. Calione comes down from the sky and asks if Odgash forgot to tell her something. Seeing her, he says she's finally mastered the rite of the true name, and tells her to use it on the protagonist. Instead, MC cuts in and tells Calione to finish her father's killer. Odgash says he has no idea what they're talking about. He insists Kaimar's was his best friend and he'd never hurt him. Then Shubi steps forward and exposes him. She says everything he confessed was already transmitted, so Calione knows the truth. That makes Odgash snap. He rages that they're all plotting against him. Han tells Shubi to lock him down before he can run. Shubi uses her territory's power to bind him with heavy roots. A magic seal forms around him too, but Odgash still says they can all come at him together. Calione attacks first, firing her magic at her former master. All her hate pours into that strike. Odgash takes the full blast. Afterward, Calione is nearly emptied out from using so much power at once. Even so, Odgash looks much worse after taking the hit head-on. Thinking of her father, Calione starts breaking down again, but she barely gets a moment. Odgash is already standing back up. That catches her completely off guard. Han jumps in at once, refusing to let Calione stay in Odgash's sights. Odgash, meanwhile, is furious that a human dared to wound him. Odgash is furious, but it doesn't save him. Once he gets his focus, Jaewu turns Odgash's own horn against him. He says that's the one sure way to kill something immortal. Use its own body to do it. Then, with one clean and brutal strike, he brings Odgash down for good. Right after that, his system pops up with the rewards for winning the fight. At the same time, Shubi starts healing Calione. She explains that Calione almost died because she burned through too much mana in that attack. Still, at least Odgash is finally dead. Now that the fight is over, Calione has no idea what comes next for her. Then the protagonist asks her to join his party. That makes Calione realize she finally has somewhere she belongs. A little later, Marin wakes up. She complains that the medicine tastes awful, but her father says she has to drink it anyway. Lord Valor and the others risk their lives to bring it back. Marin asks if he'll grant her wish once she finishes it, and her father agrees. Meanwhile, the protagonist brings up their deal, but the guild leader says they should talk somewhere his daughter can't hear. Once they're alone, the protagonist asks if the debt problem has been handled. The guild leader says the debtors are fighting it hard. The protagonist asks why they're making such a big deal out of it. The guild leader says it's probably because of the Elector of Saxony. Earlier, the Elector met with the guild master and said those debtors were big spending VIP customers, so he didn't support the arrangement. He also reminded him that their guilds had been friendly for a long time, and said that if the merchant set up a meeting with the Elector of Saxony, he could change everything in their favor. Han Jiawu figures out what's going on. They're panicking because if the debt gets settled, the merchant may lose his tie to Saxony. That also explains why those lighter bastards were acting so wild. If this were only the Emperor against the House of Bern, things would still be even. But once the Elector of Saxony gets involved, it becomes far more dangerous. Now he sees why Valpurgis is so worried, and starts looking for a way to help her. Noticing his concern, the merchant suggests trying a different way out of this stalemate. Han Jiawu ignores that and asks the merchant a different question. Is he good at negotiating? Elsewhere, at a noble estate, news arrives that Saxony plans to stand against them. The noble groans that if his family had accepted the debt transfer, they at least could have pushed back the deadline. Now they don't even have that. The messenger says they've already done all they can, so the noble orders a servant to rush to the capital, even if he has to cling to the emperor to get help. He says this problem has to be fixed no matter what, and the servant must not come back empty-handed. Later, the protagonist system tells him his summon undead skill has leveled up. Now he can call his undead allies in the daytime too. To test it, he summons Piffenheim and she appears just fine under the sun. Han Jiawu announces that she and the other vampires are true daywalkers now, so he gives her a special job. Pulling out a document, he tells her to deliver it to a man named Reeb Saltz, and makes it clear this paper is very important. Because of that, she has to be extremely careful with it. Soon after, the guildmaster arrives and says everything Lord Valor asked for before leaving is ready. He shows off a grand carriage made by a master craftsman. According to him, only a handful of nobles own something this fancy, and he got it through a connection at a client's company. He also added money for the herbs and extra travel funds, so Valor should be fully covered. Still, he has to ask what the protagonist plans to do with something so extravagant. The protagonist just grins and says maybe he'll use it to smash the heads of the people who oppose their deal. Then Marin comes out to say goodbye. The protagonist reminds her that even though she's feeling better, she still needs to take it easy for a while. Marin says she has something for Valor. A moment later, she plants a kiss on his cheek, leaving everyone there completely shocked. Marin simply says it's her thank you gift. After saying goodbye, she and her father head home. On the way, Marin reminds him about the promise to grant her one wish. Then she reveals it. She wants to become Lord Valor's bride. She says she fell for him the moment they met, and her father is clearly not happy to hear that. Far from there, the protagonist and his group keep traveling. Calione says Marin really is bold. She never expected the girl to go after the protagonist like that. Then she adds that Lord Valor seems to care about money more than anything. Han Jiawu pushes back, saying they just don't get it. In his eyes, the whole world runs on money. But the disapproving looks from Calione's nuns make him quickly regret saying that. Luckily, a call from Kubalt interrupts the awkward moment. Kubalt heard Valor made it back from Grossglockner, and is happy he survived. The protagonist says he's fine and still moving with the mission. Then Kubalt asks if the enemies have already left. His ravens notice the move right away, which is why he's calling now. The report just came in. Han Jiawu is impressed by the speed and asks what he learned. Kubalt says everything is playing out just like Valor expected. The enemy really did leave for the capital this morning, and they looked furious. The protagonist admits he helped cause that, then hints that even more surprises are waiting for them. Kubalt also mentions that Roland, the Rose Damoness, is in the capital right now. Hearing that, the protagonist asks him to spread a rumor there. Kubalt says MC Jiawu is as careful as ever, and MC answers that this is exactly what their alliance is for. Kubalt agrees and says he'll make sure he is rewarded, but then tries to end the call. The protagonist teases him for getting so flustered. Kubalt just says he'll trust him and hangs up. Afterward, the protagonist realizes he may have said something a little too embarrassing. Calione is surprised that he talks so casually with Kubalt of Plusen, and realizes his network is much bigger than she thought. Then the protagonist says he's just come up with an idea. Blushing, Calione asks why he's looking at her like that. Han Jiawu tells her she just needs to do one thing for the sake of the group. Sometime later in Vienna, the empire's capital, people are already buzzing with rumors. They say Kaimar's daughter has come to the city, and that Ajash killed her father only to be killed by her in the end. Some even claim she used her family's secret technique on him. On top of that, everyone keeps talking about how unbelievably beautiful she is. Into all that gossip, the protagonist's carriage rolls in, and the crowd instantly assumes the rider inside is Kaimar's daughter. Embarrassed, Calione asks if this is really needed, but he gives her a firm yes. Her face is one of their best weapons. Calione shoots back that the only weapons she knows are swords and axes. He tells her someone wearing a dress that beautiful shouldn't talk so rough. She admits she hates this attention and feels awkward with everyone watching, especially since she doesn't even know proper noble manners. Han Jiawu tells her it's simple. Rest one hand lightly against your cheek and place the other over your folded knees. Then put on the most charming look you can manage. If she does that, he'll handle the rest. Annoyed, Calione reminds him she's a commander, someone who wears armor, not dresses. Acting like this would ruin the image she's built as a leader. The protagonist calmly says she's free to leave the team and go her own way, but if she wants to stay, she has to follow his rules. Backed into a corner, Calione gives in. She follows his directions and lifts one hand to her cheek while setting the other over her folded knees. Then comes the part that matters most. She puts on a soft, enchanting look that shows off her stunning beauty. The second people see her, they're speechless. Even though she's dying of embarrassment, Calione holds the pose. Before long, men all across the city are praising her, and the strength of that reaction leaves Calione genuinely shaken. Not far away, Roland gathers her servants together. She says an extremely important guest is coming, and regrets that they aren't receiving this person in her Rose Palace because to her, this guest matters more than the Emperor, more than any demon lord, so she orders everyone to do their best. The chefs must prepare the finest meal of their lives, and the maids must make the place cleaner and lovelier than even the Rose Palace. When an attendant says the guest is almost here, Roland urges everyone to give it everything they have. She calls it the most important day of her life. Privately, she thinks she's doing all of this for her Lord Chamars. Roland's beauty and voice charmed every man who met her, making other demons jealous, but there was much more to her than that. She used words like weapons, and through diplomacy she helped turn Roserant into a powerful nation. That's why people called her the Bride of Roserant, but almost no one knew the truth behind that title. Long ago, she went to Chamars and confessed that he was the only person she could open her heart to. Believing her feelings would never change, she begged him to accept her. Then little Calione interrupted and asked her father who the beautiful lady was. He simply answered that she was a colleague. Calione then offered Roland a gift, saying she had made it with her uncle Ajash. Because you're so pretty, she said, I'll give you the best cookies I made. At that moment, Roland understood why Chamars had turned her down. His heart already belonged to someone else. After that, she asked Princess Calione if one day the girl might name a castle for her. She said it would be a great honor if Lady Calione chose the name. Moved by Roland's beauty, the princess gave her one. Roland loved it, and later built a grand castle, using the name the princess chose. Now in the present, Roland and Calione finally meet again. With Lord Chamars gone, she said, the first thing she wanted was to meet his only living relative, his daughter. Then she dropped to one knee before the princess. Calione was clearly taken in by how much had been prepared for her. Roland let out a small sigh. If this were the Rose Palace, she said, she could have served something even grander. But Calione told her this was already more than enough. Roland also thanked Lord Valor for bringing back the princess. Everyone thought had died. She added that Count Niederbaron had told her Valor always finds strange ways through impossible situations. She even brought up the odd link between the two of them. Han quickly changed the subject. Roland sounded disappointed. She does love a good romance. Still, she gave in and said they could talk business. The protagonist then explained why he had really come to pass along a message from Philip, the Elector of Steel. Roland was relieved to hear Philip was alive, but at once asked if she could meet him herself. Han shook his head. Sadly, Philip isn't well enough to see anyone right now. Hearing that, Roland told him to get to the point. MC delivered Philip's words. He can't move openly for now, so he has named Valor Stead. Valor his stand-in with full authority, and he asks for your help, Roland, to recover the pulse soon. Even if I have to bend the truth, he thinks, I need Roland on my side. Since Margarita was cursed by he who squats in the grave, Pezimet is clearly getting help from the Great Lord too. Margarita alone won't be enough to stop him, and I can't kill someone protected by the Great Lord myself. That's why bringing Roland in matters so much. With her help, I can crush Pezimet. After that, Han finished Philip's message. Roland had listened closely to every word. Then she said she'd agree on one condition. She pointed out that Lord Valor should already know the trouble she's dealing with. The protagonist understood she meant the economic blockade, so Roland pressed him. If Lord Valor truly speaks for His Highness, then the Emperor can't just brush aside your words. Han told her not to worry. He said everything was already in place. At the same time, in the Imperial Palace, a desperate servant begged the Emperor for help, but was turned down on the spot. Emperor Franz IV said he was sorry, and claimed the story had moved him at first. Even so, the servant kept insisting there had to be some order stopping this. The Emperor, sitting before heaps of gold, didn't change his mind. He said that despite the debt deal, they had at least shown enough respect to offer the Empire a small tribute. He also mentioned hearing that the Velia Merchants Guild was backing the debtors. The servant sent by his lord to stop the agreement had no idea how to answer anymore. Soon he would have to return to his master and admit he had failed. Just then a soldier arrived with news. Lord Valor has come, your majesty. The Emperor ordered that he be let in at once. Entering the hall, Han bowed and said it was a great honor to stand before his majesty. He introduced himself as Valor, and offered his service to the Empire. The Emperor said he'd been expecting him, then told him to ignore the other man. He's just a messenger boy, he said. Han then asked to speak with the Emperor in private, and after some reluctance the Emperor agreed. The noble's envoy was thrown out right away. Even as he was removed, he kept begging the Emperor to think again. It changed nothing. Worse still, MC smiled and waved as the man was dragged off. That only made the young envoy burn with anger. Far from the capital, at Odgash's castle, The defeated demons told Odgash's daughter what had happened. She exploded with rage. She reminded them she'd wanted to go too. If I'd been there, she snapped, I would have done far better than Calione. While she was fuming, a servant rushed in with urgent news, but she was too angry to pay attention. The servant finally forced it out. The emperor has placed our lands under economic blockade. She just looked confused. Politics wasn't her strength. The servant, nervous about how she'd react, ended up looking confused too. So what does that even mean? She asked at last, back with Han. Now alone with the emperor, he comments that just seeing the capital's wealth makes him feel the greatness of his majesty's achievements. He says he almost feels honored just to stand there. The emperor cuts off the flattery. In his eyes, since entering politics, Valor has already used Koimars's daughter to calm anti-demon feeling in key places. He's even made former enemies into allies. That much is clear to him. So the emperor says Valor must have come for a reason, and he wants to hear it. Still, he sees Valor as a mouse in front of a beast, someone who thinks words alone can win. And in his pride, the emperor can't imagine being outplayed by a newly chosen hero. So he asks plainly, what are you really here to say? Han respectfully asks that the blockade on Roserant be moved to Odgash's land instead. The emperor asks what he would gain from that, since a simple friendship pact with the Rose Kingdom hardly seems worth it. He adds that the old Black Widow Rowland doesn't interest him. He answers that she will do whatever his majesty commands. Then he shows the emperor a document, and that finally catches his attention. It says Rowland herself agrees to pay 10,000 florins each year. Even then, the emperor asks if there's any proof it's real. Han explains that Odgash is now hated more than anyone else on the continent, so if the emperor blocks the Demon King's territory, the whole world will praise him for it. The emperor admits Calione is interesting, but says that's still not enough. Politics, he says, isn't ruled by feelings. Annoyed, Han thinks that logic didn't matter when Roserant was blocked, just because Roland refused tribute. Then he speaks again. Odgash died in the last Great War. Now his followers are getting ready to fight the demonic dragon. The danger is still there, and the Empire's people are afraid. So now is the time to act. The Emperor says Valor really does know how to talk. Han thanks him though, inside he knows that's not true. What he really has is a power that makes people believe him. He says he only wants to repay his majesty's favor with a small gift. That answer only angers the Emperor. He says he won't be fooled by sweet, easy lies, and he demands to know if Valor dares test the patience of the ruler of the continent. Right after that, he orders the guards to drag Valor away. Han can't figure out what just happened. Why is the Emperor suddenly acting like this? Later, at Rowland's banquet, Calione feels out of place. Her attendants are eating happily, while she can't enjoy any of it. Even the Emperor is in a great mood, saying he's never had a conversation as pleasant as the one he had with Lord Valor. Han himself still doesn't understand the Emperor's sudden change, but then the Emperor tells him to call him uncle from now on. He doesn't want any more formal titles. The protagonist decides to go with it and calls him uncle. The Emperor lights up and says that sounds much better. Outside, the servant who got kicked out of the palace is boiling with envy as he sees how close the Emperor has become with Valor. He fumes that this place should have been his. He can't understand how Valor won where he lost. Then one of his allies asks, why not kidnap Valpurgis? Another hooded figure warns that it's too risky, and says they should think of another plan. But their leader fires back that it's still possible. If they don't act now, their whole family could be destroyed, so he orders them to move carefully, but make no mistakes. Back to Han, he finally makes it to his room, worn out. Caligon tells him that's what happens when he drinks every cup put in front of him. MC laughs it off and calls it socializing. He says he used to survive 7 rounds easily, but now he only wants to sleep. Before he can rest, Cabal contacts him and says something terrible has happened. Han, groaning with a headache, tries to brush it off, but Cabal won't let him. This isn't a joke, it's about Valpurgis, and Valor needs to take it seriously. At that same moment in Odgash's castle, the Demon King's daughter says there's no time to hesitate. She wants revenge for her father at once. This is Margaret von Tash. She swears that to avenge him, she'll even devour the demonic dragon if she must. Then she orders every fighter ready for battle to prepare for war, and to train without rest until all of them are ready. She wants to march to Grossglockner as soon as possible. Her servant carefully suggests she shouldn't rush in so blindly. He explains that the Emperor has already placed that area under blockade, and Valpurgis recently brought St. Margaret back to life. On top of that, Roserant's blockade has been lifted, so Rowland won't stay quiet either, which makes their situation even worse. He urges her to move carefully before putting any plan into action, but Margaret von Tash won't hear it. She says nothing will stop her, least of all the weak. Meanwhile, Valpurgis is being held captive. She demands to know why they're doing this. One of the plotters tells her their goal. They plan to pressure the Emperor. He boasts that their fortress is surrounded by a lake and nearly impossible to break. Even if the Borns attack, he says, they won't bring it down. In his mind, the plan can't fail. Valpurgis mocks them, saying fools who trust walls and gates won't be saved by them. Annoyed, the man snaps at her to shut up. She's far too loud for a hostage. Then he sneers, waiting for that bastard Valor to save you? Just thinking about the shame Valor caused him makes him even angrier. Valpurgis shoots back that he'll be even more ashamed once she gets free. The enemy tells her she can't do anything like this. She's completely alone. Then another conspirator rushes in and warns them they're under attack. Outside, Han's group has already surrounded the place. Haxic reports that every unit is in position except Piffenheim, who's handling a special task. They can strike whenever he gives the word. Even Kururak asks if he should join the attack. The protagonist tells everyone to be quiet. Their mission is to rescue Valpurgis and wipe out Ritter. They've gone too far. He says he would have ignored them if they just stayed out of the way. But now he'll finish this hunt to the end. They launch the assault right away. The protagonist tells Hexic to take one side while he takes the other. Kururak begs to stay with his master. Hexic cuts in and says they're moving together, including the protagonist. So the protagonist sends Kururak with Hexic and one of the sisters. Kururak hates that plan. Hexic scares him. Han lets out a sigh. There's no time to babysit cowards. They need to move now. Inside the prison room, the kidnappers watch the battle outside. The leader's anger spikes the moment he spots the protagonist. Still obsessed with payback, he grabs a sword and imagines what he'll do once he finds him. Just thinking about it makes him happy, and he rushes straight at his target. The richer leader orders the others not to leave their ally fighting alone. Valpurgis realizes the protagonist came for her, and one thought hits her right away. He always saves her. Ever since they first met, he's been there for her. That only makes her more furious at how helpless she feels now. She starts shaking with anger, and in that rage, the pillar binding her begins to crack. Elsewhere, Ritter thinks everything was going perfectly until that servant got involved. He regrets not going to the capital himself. Then a sudden sound makes him jump. He turns and sees that the Countess of Barnes has broken free. He can't believe the paladin got through a reinforced restraint. Still, he figures she can't do much without a sword, so he attacks first. He's completely wrong. Valpurgis fires back at once, and her blow snaps his sword in two. Richter panics, but he insists he still won't lose. That confidence gets him a hard right hook to the chin. The punch even knocks out a tooth. Valpurgis says she can't keep leaning on others forever. This time, she means to end things herself. Richter tries to defend himself, but he can barely talk. He only manages to mumble that he wasn't part of the plan. Valpurgis says she doesn't care. Before she can strike again, Ritter yells that it's rude to call a lady a monster, and Valpurgis shoots back, then suddenly notices something coming. A real monster enters the fight. Ritter laughs and says his monster is finally awake. Now one monster can fight another. He calls the brute Igor and orders him to protect him. Meanwhile, the protagonist checks if he's headed the right way. Kubalt says yes. He's watching through his familiars, and someone named Igor just showed up there. Kubalt explains that Igor is the human weapon they've been creating. He's the same one behind the slaughter at Ritter's castle. A truly savage monster. Han frowns. That was never part of the original game story. Right then, someone calls out, Valor Stead. Valor. He thanks Kubalt for the warning, then says he has to hang up and handle this. A Ritter conspirator steps in front of him, snarling that he'll finally get his revenge. While he's busy taunting the protagonist, he leaves his back wide open. In an instant, a shadow the protagonist summons smashes him in the head. He drops on the spot and slams face first into the ground. Han mutters that this was a complete waste of time. He needs to move. Elsewhere, Igor charges at the paladin. Valpurgis handles it in her own style. She slips around his attacks, using her speed to stay ahead. Then she feels like there's something familiar about Igor. She asks if he was the one who ambushed her and dragged her here. Either way, as a member of the Walpurgis convent, she says she can't let her guard down. That only makes Igor even angrier. Walpurgis has no idea why he suddenly changed like that. Ritter explains that the paladin said the forbidden word. Igor hates the Walpurgis convent. He shouts. Now the Countess is in even deeper trouble. Elsewhere, Margaret von Tash complains about both the food and the camp. Her servant explains that their money is running out and things will only get better if they rescue Lord von Tash. The blockade hurt them so badly they even had to sell their castle. When Margaret asks about the army, her servant says the troops got partial pay and full medical care. She snaps that they should be training, not doing anything else, even when he reminds her the soldiers need treatment. Margaret says that's only because her father spoiled the servants too much. The servant quietly says, things were better when Lord Oddash was here, and Margaret, annoyed, orders him to bring her real meat. Then the story flashes back to a young Igor trying to join the Walpurgis convent. One nun tells him they prove their faith through physical training, but looking at him she doubts he can even lift weights, much less keep up. She respects his effort, but he's too weak and they only accept women. After all, it was a convent. Igor still carries that grudge. Back in the present, he attacks Valpurgis because she brought up that old trauma. Ritter bursts into laughter, saying nobody can stop Igor once he's mad. But then Igor turns on Ritter too, just for saying the convent's name. Valpurgis still doesn't get why he hates the convent so much, but she can feel the sadness behind his punches. Knowing she can't keep dodging forever, she finally strikes back and meets his fists with her own. Igor feels the impact of her hit, and it only makes him angrier. His past flashes through his mind, the nun's words and the promise he made to become stronger. But that brutal training made him lose more and more hair, and it left a mark on his body. Even so, it also gave him an incredible physique. Valpurgis punches his stomach, but it does nothing. Then she hits his face and realizes that's his weak point. After knocking him out, she says she'll face him again once his fists stop hesitating. But when the fortress starts shaking, Valpurgis wonders if she hit too hard. The protagonist feels the tremors too, and wonders if it's an earthquake. A second later, the ceiling above him collapses and nearly buries him. He reacts fast with his magic sword, cutting through the falling rocks before they can land. Even so, the collapse wrecks a huge part of the castle and blocks his way. He says he doesn't have time for this. Just then, Cobalt calls and says Walpurgis is safe, but the room she's in definitely isn't. He sends a bat to guide him and tells him to save her and get out fast. At the same time, Walpurgis knows Valor must be coming and decides she has to find him first. She still wants to say what she couldn't tell him before. But while she's distracted, a rock almost smashes into her head. Then the protagonist arrives and cuts the stone in half. Walpurgis is thrilled to see him again. Even in the middle of danger, he feels the same. Then he notices a fallen enemy and asks who that is. Cobalt's bat cuts in, saying there's no time for questions. The whole place is about to fall apart. So they run, and Walpurgis is shocked that someone so huge can fit inside a tiny glove. The protagonist had stored Igor in his inventory because he didn't want to leave him behind. He never says it out loud, but Walpurgis can tell Valor has a kind heart. While they're escaping, she says there's something she needs to tell him. Han says it can wait until they're safe, but the Countess insists it's important. Then she reveals that Walpurgis isn't her real name. Her true name is Chartier. The protagonist says it's a beautiful name, but then realizes they may not make it out in time. Walpurgis sees that too, but debris suddenly crashes into her. Han tries to stop it, but he gets hit as well. The bat panics, but the protagonist says he's still alive. Even with the ceiling coming down, both he and Walpurgis barely made it through. They quickly realize they're both safe. Hax shows up, and the protagonist says her timing couldn't be better. He uses her wings to get out of there, reaching for Walpurgis's hand. Hax warns that the whole place will fully collapse in 5 seconds, and he desperately tries to pull her free as fast as he can. But Walpurgis struggles to keep hold of him. Then the castle finally gives way. A giant cloud of dust bursts out over the area. Still, everyone escapes just in time. And after telling the protagonist her real name, her feelings for him grow a lot stronger. Another glowing message appears, saying her affection for him has risen a lot. Hexex carries him through the dust as the fortress falls apart below. Looking up at him mid-flight, she says he barely made it. 1 second later and they'd all be dead. He steadies himself and says he's just glad he got there in time. Hexex then mentions that her lord has a call. He glances over and says it's Cobalt. He answers with a greeting, but an angry voice screams his name. Startled, he realizes it's Margareta. Furious, she says those crazy Ritter rats dared to kidnap Walpurgis, and admits she was already on her way because she planned to hunt them down and beat them half to death. He quietly repeats that she's going to catch them and beat them, and she happily confirms that's exactly the plan. Below, the soldiers look up as she hovers over the ruined fortress and raises both arms. She loudly announces the secret technique of the Walpurgis Convent's abyss, the Great Margareta Light. Then she unleashes supernova, and a blazing pillar of light crashes down, blasting up earth, bodies, and stone, standing in the smoking crater glowing gold. She laughs and declares herself unbeatable. Watching from above, he gulps and decides he should avoid making her mad for a while. By the next morning, at the government center of Niederbayern and Landshut, Walpurgis's villa becomes the meeting place for Chartier, Margareta, and Valor. Soon a carriage rolls in, and armored men in dark blue cloaks step out and form neat ranks. Margareta whispers that the guest has arrived. She calls it another dramatic entrance, while Valor stares at the wall of armor and says these soldiers look even more heavily equipped than the Emperor's elite. Then a tall blonde noble walks forward beneath the banners. Maximilian, Prince Elector of Bayern. Walpurgis breaks formation and rushes into his arms, calling him uncle and asking if he's been well. He pulls back to check her over, asking if she's hurt and saying she has no idea how worried he was. Flustered, she says she's fine and that Valor kept her safe. His eyes shift to the one who saved her. Then his tone turns sharp. He says Valor Vapor, or whatever that name is, should vanish like his name suggests. Walpurgis tenses, and Valor is left wondering why the man's attitude changed so fast. Margareta cuts in, saying they would have been in real danger without Valor. Walpurgis is only standing here because he got there in time. The prince marches up to Valor, grumbling that if he had arrived before this brat, but he catches himself and mutters that the boy should just be thankful. Valor gives a dry little laugh, thinking that even with all those soldiers, the prince wouldn't have reached the fortress any sooner. Then the prince suddenly opens his arms and loudly declares that his precious Walpurgis should sleep with her uncle tonight. She squirms in panic while Margareta tells him to calm down. Watching this, Valor figures Walpurgis probably had a rough childhood. Once the formal mood returns, the prince announces that Valor will be knighted for his great service and ordered to protect Walpurgis with complete loyalty. Valor bows and accepts with thanks. Later, as he walks through the cathedral, he thinks over what happened. Today, the Prince Elector made him a knight, and even though the man clearly didn't like it, he couldn't ignore the rescue. Ryder's debt was also turned into a land grant for him. Quite a few people didn't look happy about that. In another hall, Valor summoned the Emperor before the complainers. The Emperor slammed his hand down and demanded to know if those punks dared disrespect his brother. To Valor, it was the Emperor's usual lesson. Money and power rule everything. Inside, he smirks and thinks they look like a bunch of cute little brats. By the time he finally reaches his room, he's completely worn out. He drops onto the bed and sums it up. The Ritter who messed with Walpurgis is gone. He's officially a knight now, and he even has a small piece of land. Then his thoughts drift to a certain blonde girl. Even though he had watched her in run after run, she now feels completely different. His door suddenly flies open, and the blue-haired Princess Calione storms in. He blurts out her name just as she points at him, lips shaking. She demands to know how he could do this. He told her to follow him, then disappeared. What was she supposed to do after that? Valor quickly raises both hands and tells her to calm down. Then Roland steps in and gently tells Princess Calione to back off for now, settle herself, and try again later. Calione blinks and asks if settle herself means more training. She says Ojix already made her train plenty, and Roland waves that off, saying she means a different kind of calm. A moment later, the princess turns red and finally settles down. Then she declares she'll let this go for now and orders Valor to answer when she calls for him. Roland lets out a cheerful little laugh as she leaves. Valor rubs his temple, wondering what Roland whispered, and admits she really saved him there. Then a calm voice points out that disappearing from the capital without a word would shock anyone. He yawns and says he just wants to sleep. Then someone softly calls his name. The voice comes from the balcony. He turns and sees Chartier waiting there. She tilts her head and asks if he'll take a walk with her. Caught off guard, he warms up right away and says they should go now. As they walk under the moon, he brushes off his sleeves and says the whole day was total chaos. She agrees, it really was. After a glance at her, he brings up Valpurgis and says that name was an alias. Chartier nods and explains that strictly speaking it's her baptism name. She adds that the festival for the goddess Valpurga is called Valpurgis. He says that explains why it sounded like the goddess of compassion. In his head, he runs through this world's gods. Rugen is justice, Valpurga is compassion, Orbiana rules nature and life, Marga rules light, and Aquila rules time and space. Since she serves Valpurga's convent, he works up the nerve and says Chartier is a beautiful name. She blushes, surprised, then softly tells him that's fine. He thinks it fits her perfectly, and she leans in to say he may use it when they're alone. At that, he pumps his fist to himself and says he understands, only in private. He grins inside, thinking that at this rate, maybe they might even an actual kiss. A red pillar suddenly slams down in front of them with a thunderous crash. He spins at once and shields Chartier. A red-horned dragon woman lands in the smoking impact point, staring straight at him, and says Valor is coming with her now. All he can think is how awful his luck is. At the same time, Margaret de Ventash's voice rings across the grounds, calling everyone to gather. Demons and monsters pour out from the hedges into the open area. Hands on her hips, she glares at the messy group and demands to know why they're all in their underwear. A slime answers that they have no money. When she argues they sold the castle, he says the money is delayed because of the economic blockade. She cuts him off and tells them that's enough. Just fix it. Then she jerks a thumb behind her and announces that their next destination is the lair of the demonic dragon. Gross Glockner. Grinning wide, she raises a fist and shouts that they should fear nothing and eat anything that moves because the demonic dragon is hers. Meanwhile, as Shubi carries him through the night sky, Valor finally snaps. She asks if he's gone off on some reckless rampage again, and he instantly denies it. Through clenched teeth, he says a disaster this huge should be handled by people way above his level. She refuses that answer and says only he can deal with what's happening. Then the red dragon woman brings him down onto broken stone. She folds her wings behind her, facing her across the ruined ground. He asks what she's trying to do here. She narrows her eyes, still focused on the strange power that rose from him a moment ago. To herself, she thinks he's crafty enough to even play with Agash. Old memories keep surfacing, and what she saw long ago convinces her it can only be him. She steps closer, then presses a finger to his forehead. He flinches and demands to know what she is. Calmly, she asks if he can hear her voice. He says yes, clearly. She replies that that's good, and declares that from this moment on, they will form a pact called a soul oath. He repeats the strange term in disbelief, and asks what that even means. She explains that they must put up their souls as collateral to protect each other's secrets. For a pact like this, she adds, they need a dangerous being as witness. He repeats that part and asks what kind of dangerous being she means, then wonders if she plans to call the Grand Lord of Darkness. One look at her face tells him he guessed right. That makes him careful. Last time he dealt with Margarita, he only lived because she had an angel's heart. So what chance does he have now? Raising a hand, he asks what happens if he refuses. She repeats the word refuse, and purple power swells around her. The pressure slams into him, and he braces himself. Annoyed, he thinks she really should try talking before using force. Then he cuts in and says he has one condition. If they're doing this, the terms will come from him. She agrees right away. He freezes, stunned, and asks why she's accepting so easily. After coughing and steadying himself, he says he likes people who are direct. Besides, a dragon's promise is supposed to be the most trustworthy vow there is. A slow smile forms on his lips as he realizes this deal might actually be interesting. The dragon woman lifts a hand to her mouth and says she'll first offer her thanks. Her eyes harden with resolve as she says they should begin. Black-violet power crashes down between them, and the air roars as the ritual takes hold. Valor doubles over under the darkness, pressing in. Through gritted teeth, he says it feels like his mind is being ripped away. The red dragon snarls at him to focus and keep his thoughts together, warning that this place is closer to the afterlife than the world of the living. Through the blur, a blue system window appears saying the player's soul is protected. Valor forces his eyes open and says this is on a whole different level from what happened with Margarita. Then the world around them falls apart into endless black. Valor walks into the void and every step comes back to him in hollow echoes. He studies the emptiness around him. The dragon's voice cuts through, saying, "There's nothing here." She calls out Valor, as if trying to keep him grounded. He looks at her and asks what's wrong, saying that expression doesn't suit her. She stammers that he suddenly seems different. He brushes that off and says they should stop wasting time and finish the ritual. She agrees, then turns away, sets her stance, and starts the invocation. She calls to a being darker than darkness and deeper than the abyss. Then she says a small, insignificant being humbly seeks an audience and calls on the great boiling abyss. Silence answers. Valor hesitates and asks if that was it. She immediately says someone is coming. A ripple spreads through the black like disturbed water, opening into a growing vortex. From its center, a woman slowly rises, covered in shadow. Her long dark hair hangs over her shoulders, and she calmly adjusts a round lens on a chain, her face unreadable, as if she'd been there the whole time. She notes that a dragon and a human are standing before her. The dragon tenses up and quickly greets the Grand Lord. She tries to explain why they came, but the Grand Lord cuts her off and says they're here to make a pact. Valor flinches. He asks how she knows. The answer is simple. She just does. With a faint smile, the Grand Lord says nothing can be hidden from her. That includes Valor's plan to use what he knows about the seven-demon couple as leverage. Valor says that only helps move things along, then bluntly tells her to grant their request. Shabi cries out, shocked by how rude he's being. The Grand Lord just watches, now clearly interested. Shabi blurts out that this is the Grand Lord of Darkness. Valor tells her to wait. Amused, the Grand Lord calls him interesting. Then she agrees. She'll make the pact and even give him a small gift. As her power settles over them, she adds that Valor can't handle 3 sponsors right now. He freezes and repeats the number. Stunned. In his head, he insists that he should only have the sponsorship of the one crouching in the grave. The Grand Lord tells him he really doesn't know yet. Valor snaps, telling her to stop reading his thoughts whenever she wants. She only smiles and says he'll find out soon enough. Then she lifts a finger and points. Light and pressure explode outward. The blast throws both Valor and the dragon back as the void howls. While her presence starts fading, she says they'll meet again, and next time, she hopes his vessel will be much bigger. Valor fights against the storm and spits out an angry protest before her last words vanish into the dark. He curses, yelling that they're always like this. Far away, a huge pillar of purple light shoots into the sky. The shaking almost knocks him off balance, and then a system window flashes in front of him. It says his stamina and physical resistance have risen a lot, and his darkness energy has grown by a huge amount. He lets out a slow breath, feeling the change in his body, and says this must be the result. The Grand Lord's final words keep echoing in his mind. He narrows his eyes and wonders if she meant he's supposed to become stronger. The Red Dragon instantly calls him an idiot. She warns that if the Grand Lord of Darkness has marked him, death may be the smallest of his problems. Before he can answer, green energy tears across the battlefield. Margarita Fontache appears and swings her weapon down. The blow erupts with a thunderous blast, sending rubble and dust flying. Standing in the wreckage, she throws her arms wide, laughs, and announces that she's here for the demonic dragon. Valor stares and asks who she even is. The dragon, just as confused, says she has no idea. The horned woman points at them and orders the demonic dragon to come down at once. She keeps roaring for the dragon to fight her, laughing the whole time. Margarita Fontache has arrived full of rage, but she still sounds thrilled. Laughing again, she shouts the dragon's name, Schwartz Teufel. She declares that she's here to avenge her pig-headed father. Valor, completely flat, tells Shubi to deal with her. Shubi blurts out in disbelief, stunned that he'd say that so casually. At the same time, the Grand Lord's warning comes back to him. The gift alone could be deadly just to receive. Shubi spreads her arms and says her body is already in terrible shape. Frustrated, Valor says he doesn't know what else to do because she's worn out too and can barely summon even one undead now. Shubi clicks her tongue and mutters that this wouldn't be happening if he hadn't done something so stupid earlier. Another system notice appears because of the gift of the boiling abyss. His HP has temporarily dropped below 10. His eyes widen. A second message says that thanks to the rise in darkness energy, he can now turn an even higher ranked darkness being into an undead. He immediately thinks of Philip, and a dangerous idea forms. Lightning slams into the ground. A red warning says the target is a higher dimensional life form, and another warns that summoning it may put the player's life in danger. Even with blood at the corner of his mouth, Valor smiles. Right now, the only real backing he can count on is the Gravekeeper. He still doesn't know anything about the other sponsor, yet somehow 3 Transcendents have taken notice of him. His face hardens. He refuses to let this break him, even as the life-threatening warning keeps flashing. He points forward and says that if that's how this works, they might as well line up 10 more sponsors too. Far above, the Grand Lord watches in silence. Her fingers rest near her lips, amusement flickering in her eyes. Electric light bursts around Margarita as the summoning starts. She braces while her remaining followers gather behind her. Their eyes sharpen with tension as purple shadows ripple together and form a huge shape. The darkness crackles, and then a blonde man in ornate armor appears inside a storm of violet aura and lightning. It's Philip, standing like he doesn't belong in this world. Valor steps forward and tells Philip to quit posing and move. A faint purple glow lights Philip's eyes. The air around him twists as dark violet wisps coil off him. Valor tilts his head, almost amused, and gathers darkness in his palm. A blue message flashes. He has overpowered the soul of Philip the Elector Steel. Philip chokes on his shock as the force clamps down. Veins bulging at his temples, Philip snarls that he'll kill Valor. Valor calmly presses a hand to his chest and tells him to go ahead and try. Behind them, Margarita points and mocks him for thinking one undead can face her. Then she pauses, her eyes sharpening as she feels Philip's presence. A furious voice erupts, calling Valor an insolent brat. Margarita's side rushes in. Huge fighters and a snarling beast charging together. Philip lifts his blade, and black lunar energy wraps around it. He unleashes the first form of his sword art, then chains more crescent strikes after it. Purple arcs tear across the battlefield, ripping through the attackers and leaving only shredded remains. Philip lowers his sword and coldly calls them vermin. Margarita goes still for 1 second, then flares with rage. She throws herself forward, screaming about his insolence. Dropping from above with her weapon raised, she tries to crush him head-on. She slams in so hard that broken stone and debris burst into the air. Calling him a rat, she pours green energy into another charge, screaming as a vertical spear of green power surges up. Philip answers with another lunar crescent. His dark slash cuts straight through her attack and tears it apart. Then he slips inside her range and lands a heavy hit that snaps her head to the side. As she staggers, he says she's just vermin living off brute force. Margarita tries to steady herself, blood on her lips, but Philip hits her again. The blow crushes her posture and sends her skidding across the shattered ground. One of her companions panics and cries out for Lady Vontash. From the side, Shubi watches in silence before asking Valor if Philip really tore off the arm of the Pulse Elector. Valor says yes. A faint smile touches Philip's lips. Valor then remarks that kind of brutality fits vampires better. Margarita crashes down near the shaking green slime. The creature rushes over and anxiously asks if she's okay. Even bruised and bloodied, she insists this much is nothing. Philip walks toward them, his presence heavy. The slime urgently warns that the undead is too strong and begs her to retreat. Margarita forces herself back up, blood still on her mouth, and refuses. She snarls that those bastards killed all her subordinates, the very ones her pig-headed father left behind. Purple energy coils around her as she steadies her breathing. Jaw clenched, she decides she has to surpass her father. Philip closes in a flash of gold and black, his blade and aura dropping like a falling star. A heavy, round-bodied armored follower jumps between them and urgently tells her to run. Margarita reaches for him, but Zeguro suddenly knocks her out and hands her to the slime. The slime understands at once, carries her away, and tells him to survive and come back. Philip floats forward with a bored look and says the ridiculous creature isn't completely useless. The armored undead braces himself as Philip's shadow falls over him. Just before the killing blow, Valor cuts in and orders them to stop. Arms folded, he calls Philip by name and tells him to spare Zeguro. Philip pauses. The armored figure stays crouched, waiting. The killing intent eases as Philip obeys and turns away. Standing beside Valor, Shubi asks why he'd spare someone like that. With a faint smile, Valor says he doesn't kill without a reason. He adds that the one he spared could be useful later. Elsewhere, under a blood-red moon, a blonde woman staggers through the dark while hooded figures close in around her. A system title identifies her as the Protector and Peerless Swordsman, Falk. She grips her sword with both hands and rushes forward, cutting down her attackers as steel clashes and blood spills across the ground. Falk swings again, shouting through the strain as she forces a path open. But one attacker slips behind her and drives a weapon into her back. Her body jerks, her eyes going wide as the blade sinks deep. Red alerts flash everywhere in her vision. Then a final system notice appears, declaring that Protector Peerless Swordsman Falk has been Zaguro, trudges out of the dust. Someone realizes he's still alive. Still standing, he reaches a metal hand toward Margarita to check on her. She smacks it away at once, her face burning with anger. Margarita snaps that if he hadn't stepped in, she could have surpassed her father right then. The green blob nervously calls her lady while she struggles to calm down. Then Zaguro takes off the helmet. Inside the armor is a small purple-haired girl, relieved that her lady made it out alive. The green blob quickly explains that Zaguro wasn't trying to disrespect her. She only acted because she truly wanted to protect her lord. Margarita glares, bruises dark on her cheek, then finally lets it go. She says she'll allow it this one time, and they'd better remember that. Zaguro thanks her, and the blob hurriedly says it's good. The issue is over. Right then, red system errors flood Valor's vision. The message says Guardian Peerless Swordsman Fox has been killed. Valor jerks in shock, calls for Shubi, and demands to know if a Guardian really just died. If she knows anything, he wants answers now. Shubi goes tense and asks if the Guardians are tied to the seal. Valor only stares, confused by the sudden question. Without explaining, Shubi grabs him and tells him to come with her. She drags him down a steep rocky path. They slide through trap after trap, crashing deeper into the underground. While they're still sliding, Valor complains that she could have explained first, instead of dragging him off like this. He asks what is going on, but Shubi just keeps pulling him ahead and tells him to hold on a little longer. A moment later, they reach a sealed chamber. Before them is a huge locked gate. Chains wrap all over it, and green fumes leak from the cracks. Shubi reminds him she once mentioned something connected to the world's survival. This is what she meant. She says it plainly. If this seal breaks, the world ends at once. Then she says she's going to open it. Alarmed, Valor asks if something even worse could really be locked behind it. The chains begin to shake and shift with a loud metallic grind. Green poison gas bursts out. Valor stumbles back, coughing, and asks what kind of poison this is. A system message says the player's soul is protected. Through the gas, he catches sight of what's inside and reacts like he knows it. Another heavy clang echoes as the seal moves again. Shubi glances back and asks if he understands now. She explains that what's sealed here is a piece of a body. It belongs to the Grand Lord of Darkness, Thrashing Death. She adds that the seal has been weakening for the last 6 months. Valor repeats the time in disbelief. It matches far too well with when Philip died. He remembers the warning about going against the world's will and making the game harder, and realizes that message must have been about this. Shubi goes on saying the Guardian's death weakened the seal even more, so someone must be moving behind the scenes. Then she asks how he managed to turn a Guardian into an undead servant. Valor freezes, unsure how to answer without admitting he killed Philip himself. So he lies. He says Philip was already dead when he found him, killed by those strange beings, and that he only recovered the body. Shubi watches him for a moment, then says she understands. Since he's recognized by the Abyss, she'll trust what he says. Valor looks away. No matter what, she says, they have to stop this. In her mind flashes the image of a many-eyed horror. If Thrashing Death fully revives here, the world is truly finished. Her cold half-lidded gaze doesn't waver. She means it literally. The world will end. Valor crosses his arms and says he gets what she's saying. To him, it's simple. They need to keep this thing sealed. The fragment belongs to Thrashing Death. Dark forces are trying to break the seal, and the Guardians were protecting it. As he talks, Valor says he's starting to see the larger structure of the game. He looks at his own hand, like he's weighing fate itself, and wonders if this is the game's real ending route. After a short silence, he decides to accept it for now. Just in case, he'll leave Philip there, and Shubi must not destroy him, because he may be useful later. She gives a short thanks. Valor adds that she probably doesn't care, but she's only just become a knight, and taking all this on alone is too much. Shubi smirks and tells him to relax. She already has a trump card ready. Later, she brings him back to Walpurgis's villa in Landshut and drops him near the estate. She tells him he's on his own from here. Valor casually says he understands. Before she leaves, he stops her and asks if she forgot something. With a teasing grin, he reminds her of what she once said about adjusting herself to him. Shubi freezes, clearly flustered. She blurts out that she's leaving, shoots into the sky, and gives a quick wave before disappearing. Left alone, Valor smirks and says that from now on, all of Shubi's florins are his. Then he notices someone nearby. Walpurgis's uncle is by the wall, hanging up notices. Valor walks over and sees one of the posters has his face on it, marked as a search notice with a reward underneath. He stiffens in disbelief. Still trying to process it, he asks if Walpurgis thought he had gone missing and really put these up everywhere. Her uncle irritably says yes, that's exactly what happened, grumbling that all this effort was unnecessary. Before the uncle can keep going, Walpurgis rushes over and clings to Valor, calling his name. He quietly repeats hers, clearly caught off guard. The uncle explodes, yelling at her to get off him and asking what she thinks she's doing in public. Then Margarita storms in and sharply tells the uncle to leave. Valor blurts out Mari's name in surprise. Mari warmly welcomes him back. She jokes that he even got along with a dragon, which is pretty impressive. Valor answers with a smug smile, saying he's still closer to Mari. That throws her off, and she awkwardly says he's gotten very smooth with his compliments. Then Valor points out that she's getting a call. Sweating a little, Mari insists she doesn't need to answer it. A loud voice suddenly roars across the courtyard, calling Margarita's name. An angry nun charges straight toward them. She demands to know how the High Abbess can stay on top while dodging strict duties and dumping all the work on her subordinates. Mary, shaking with outrage, argues that if that's how she feels, then the nun should become High Abbess instead. The nun cries out that that makes no sense, then throws Mary over her shoulder and carries her off, ignoring Mary's protests to put her down. Valor watches the whole thing with a blank look and says, things seem pretty peaceful. The uncle repeats that in disbelief. Later, inside Walpurgis's room, she sits across from Valor at a small table and asks if he really needs a territory. He says yes. He explains that he needs to secure his base before the next stage begins. Walpurgis says his position is already strong and asks if this is truly needed. Valor answers that he has to build his foundation while the timing is still on his side, like rowing with the current. He thinks back to the factions Shubi mentioned, especially the followers of Thrashing Death, where every member is at least a high-ranking demon king. To face that, he needs an organization that won't fall behind. Walpurgis lowers her eyes and sighs, ashamed she couldn't see all his plans. Then she says she understands. Still, she reminds him that the bitter domain he received is in terrible shape. Valor thinks about how Mary already turned it into a total wasteland. Walpurgis explains that her uncle put a bounty on the family head's corpse, and that set off a massive search. Then a call signal interrupts them. Walpurgis says it sounds urgent and tells Valor to take it. He thanks her and answers. A dark-haired retainer reports in. They found the Lieb's child Valor asked for, but they're still chasing a certain count. Valor praises him, calling him Fenheim, and tells him to keep searching. The retainer agrees, then asks him to wait a moment. Next, a huge muscular man loudly greets Valor, saying he's been living like a wild chief. Valor greets Lieb's child and asks if he's been well. He says he has. He explains that ever since Weitenbeer became a free city, skilled people have been gathering there. He's been busy recruiting allies, and things got much better after the Narhem War. Valor says he understands. Lieb's child complains that even so, too many people are fighting over too little land. Someone nearby tells everyone to calm down and seriously asks where all these people are supposed to live. Another townsman says lines of people are already forming beyond the Rhine. That alone is enough to give him chills. Someone else says a tax-free free city sounds nice, but maybe having nobles would be better, because nobles would station troops to protect their own lands. Another person asks what they're supposed to do and suggests leaving. Someone else says they should just watch the situation for now. Valor asks if Weitenbeer is peaceful at the moment. Lieb's child says not really. He explains that Pessimut's orc army has spread along the Rhine, and is starving them out, blocking every exit so no one can leave. He adds that this kind of tactic doesn't feel like orcs at all. Valor notes that after their crushing defeat and the fall of Valor says the orcs must have changed leaders after Callian died. Callian was a real soldier. The new one, though, is the kind of bastard who would starve people out. That catches Valpurgis's attention. She softly calls his name and asks if he's okay. He says he is, and she notices he actually looks pleased. A sharp grin spreads across his face, full of dark excitement. In a hall packed with nobles, an orc lord lifts his glass. A title names him as the orc army's commander-in-chief, Gugashrak. One noble says he expected Gugashrak to take over after Callian died. Gugashrak brushes off the praise. Then the noble brings up a rumor that Gugashrak used the tolls from the free city to support young orcs. Gugashrak says those children are the future of the orc race, and that thought makes him proud. His followers heap praise on him, saying this is exactly what they expect from him, and that his love for his people is clear. The mood shatters when a soldier rushes in, yelling for the general. He reports that posters have been spread through every village beyond the Rhine. Gugashrak demands to know what the fuss is about and grabs one of the posters. The moment he reads it, his face twists with rage. He rips the paper to pieces. He bellows for someone to find out what's happening across the river right away, and a subordinate jumps to obey. Next, the story moves to the free city of Woudenberg, where a crowd fills the streets. A hooded speaker says the people have probably already heard troubling rumors. He claims demons are waiting beyond the Rhine, ready to threaten their safety. Then he tells the crowd to look at who stands among them, and accuses some people of working with demons and throwing away the city's safety. He says those same people now lead the city council and asks how that could make any sense. The crowd explodes. People shout that the traitors should die. The hooded figure declares that now is the time to become one. If they want to survive, he says, they must drive the greedy orcs back across the Rhine. He calls for unity and the crowd roars in agreement. Orcs inside the city try to force their way through and stop the speech. They shout that this is madness and can't believe humans are falling for such lies. One of them argues that they only followed the law of strength and rages over the fake posters, swearing Commander-in-Chief Gugashrak will never forgive this insult. But the people are already blinded by anger. They rush the orcs and the street erupts into violence. Papers fly, bodies slam together, and screams fill the chaos. Watching it all with a faint smile, the man removes his cloak. It's Valor. The poster is revealed in the name of Gugashrak, commander appointed by Lord Pessimeth. It declares that all humans now belong to the orcs. It says the orcs will loot, destroy, kill the weak, and use humanity as a stepping stone. The scene cuts to a formal hall, where someone offers condolences for the Weitenbeer tragedy. He condemns the ignorant people of Weitenbeer for attacking two honorable orc warriors and says they should be ashamed. Prince-Elector Saxon stands before the assembly, stern and unshaken. A public notice spreads under the title Weitenbeer Tragedy. It says that in year 20, the Prince-Elector of Saxon, the empire's highest-ranking figure in protocol, declared the people of Weitenbeer shameful. It also makes the empire's position clear. Weitenbeer will be abandoned. Then the mood flips completely. Confetti falls as the crowd shouts Valor's name. Dressed for ceremony, he steps forward while voices cry, "Long live Sir Valor." Valpurgis tells him everyone is welcoming him and urges him to say something. He looks out at the crowd and thinks about how he began as a commoner, and now he's standing here. After everything he went through, he has finally reached this place. Even if he used unrest to get here, what matters is that he rose this high. Then he starts addressing the people of Weitenbeer. Inside, he steels himself. This is where it really starts. Then he thrusts his arm up and shouts for everyone to move forward. The crowd echoes him, chanting the same words back in rhythm. He throws back his head and laughs, and Valpurgis notes that he looks happy. In just 2 days, Valor of Valors took Weitenbeer. Later, a feast breaks out. Cups go up and cheers fill the room as Valor raises his own. He tells everyone to relax. They've all worked hard these past 2 days. Then Lieb's child hooks an arm around him from behind and calls for everyone's attention. He complains that Valor is talking way too formally and says their main man has somewhere else to be. Valor panics and asks where, but before he can argue, they drag him off at a run. He's pushed into a quieter room, then freezes when he sees Chartier waiting there. She startles, he gets flustered, and he blurts out an apology. Chartier quickly says it's fine and admits she wanted to talk to him. Valor agrees to hear her out. Chartier tells him he's amazing, that he always breaks through problems in ways nobody sees coming. He won't accept that praise. Valor insists he only used whatever he had in the moment. He says it was the same with Philip and the same yesterday too, so he doesn't think he deserves admiration like that. Chartier tells him to stop putting himself down. She points out that he used Weitenbayer's hatred of half-breeds and won the city's heart in one move. And she says only Valor of Valors could have done that. Modesty is a sin now. He needs to admit his own worth. Valor says he thought she'd hate methods like this. Surprised, he calls her Valpurgis, and she smiles like that answer was exactly what she expected from him. His heart starts pounding when she softly says his name. He answers her, gathering her courage. She asks when he'll finally call her by her real name. The question jolts him. He realizes he's been calling her Valpurgis this whole time. He struggles, then finally forces the words out. Her name is Chartier. Chartier turns bright red, then laughs and admits she's not used to hearing that from someone outside her family. Valor quickly tries to backpedal and says he'll just go back to calling her Valpurgis, but Chartier immediately shuts that down. Still blushing, she leans closer and tells him Chartier is fine. Now it's Valor's turn to blush. Before the moment can go any further, someone cuts in and says, "That's enough." Callian appears, crouched down and sulking with her arms around her knees. A shocked voice blurts out her name, and Callian snaps that nobody even called for her on a day like this. She complains that her lord is too mean. Way too mean? Valor jerks upright on the red sofa, sweating, still half sure this can't be real. He demands to know how she got here. A sharp heel clicks across the floor, as another voice calmly answers that they brought her. They add that Callian started dressing up at dawn the moment she heard she'd be seeing him. Embarrassed, she flails and yells, asking what they're even talking about, while Valor just stares, far away, at the Pitsamuth camp. The place is torn apart, with bodies scattered everywhere. A horned demon stops dead and stammers that he doesn't understand what's going on. He spins around and runs, shouting to his lord that this is bad, while panic spreads through the others. Pitsamuth's face twists. He roars in shock and demands to know what happened. Storming forward, he screams at a crazy old hag and accuses her of eating all his subordinates. The woman lounges there without a care, and lazily says she's sorry, then explains that her kids are still growing. She looks up with a knowing smile, greets him, and calls him her partner. Startled, Valor calls for Roland, and she appears like she was waiting nearby the whole time. With a faint smile, she watches quietly as he approaches. Roland says he already knows Pitsamuth has outside backing. Valor replies that Pitsamuth alone wouldn't be hard to deal with, but the Grand Lord's involvement changes everything. Hearing that, Roland says a new thought about him just came to mind. She says he's like a comet that suddenly appeared out of nowhere. As she names the people gathering around him, she points out how much power has naturally started collecting at his side. After thinking it over, Valor says he feels like he's slowly becoming Philip's replacement. Roland looks genuinely surprised, clearly impressed that he figured that out on his own. Before that moment can settle, Akila steps closer and asks if there's anything more he wants. She leans in until her face is close to his. First, she asks if he wants money, then places a hand on his chest and asks if it's power instead. At the same time, Roland appears again among blooming roses and teasingly suggests there may be another answer, if it's neither of those. Completely flustered, Valor hurriedly says that's not it at all. He insists he only wanted to talk business. Turning his face away, he tries to hide how embarrassed he is while Roland smiles behind him. A moment later, Margarita asks if what he wanted to discuss was really business. Akila joins in too, pressing him on what exactly he wanted to talk about. Finally, in frustration, Valor blurts out the truth: he needs support with construction technology. Caught off guard, Roland asks if that simple request is really all he needs right now. Crowded in and held by them, Valor says yes, though it's for another reason too. The scene cuts to a cave, where someone suddenly sneezes. Valor jokingly asks if dragons can catch colds, and she shuts that down right away. Elsewhere, Rambus thanks a man for giving him such a thrilling experience. Before they can keep talking, Valor cuts in and says he has something important to ask. Then he drops 3 huge sacks of coins in front of them. Stunned, Rambus asks what all that is, and if Valor robbed the Imperial Palace. Valor says the money did not come from the palace. It came from somewhere even more dangerous. Sitting by the pile of gold, Rambus asks if Valor is just giving it away. Valor says no, he wants help recruiting people. That answer lights Rambus up. He proudly says this is exactly his kind of job and tells Valor to leave it to him, while Juju quietly starts planning their next step. Then Piffenheim comes up from behind with news. He says he found General Tilly. According to him, the general is staying in Breitnig, and something seems off there. Right then, another voice cuts in, saying she knows the city's count personally. Valor turns and sees Valpurgis walking over to join them. She explains that the count trades with them and even came to her ceremony. Seeing a perfect chance, Valor says he'll head there right away, and tells Piffenheim to come with him. Before leaving, he lets Valpurgis know he's going, which clearly surprises her. After he leaves, she quietly says she thought they might finally get some time together. The scene shifts to a bedroom, where a maid watches over Prince Philip as he sleeps. He tosses in bed, sweating and tense, clearly stuck in a bad dream. In that dream, Philip offers gifts to the Emperor, and proudly speaks of his own achievements. Then the dream shifts. He watches a dark figure move through a bright hallway, and the next thing he sees is Valor holding Valpurgis. Valor declares that he rescued her from House Ritter. The Emperor then announces that Valor will be the next Prince Elector, and Philip breaks down in despair as everything around him starts falling apart. Still in the nightmare, he screams Valor's name and sinks into endless darkness, then suddenly jolts awake. He grabs the sheets in panic and knocks a glass to the floor. Grinding his teeth, he curses Valor as a weasel. He's completely consumed by anger. The scene changes again and someone growls that this time Valor will finally die. A man yells that old Tilly is his and waves a club around. When Valor reaches a forest with Piffenheim, he asks if this is really the right place. Just then, a little boy shows up and asks if they came to see Grandpa Tilly. Smiling, the boy offers to lead them there, and Valor and Piffenheim trade a confused look before following. The child runs ahead and loudly announces that Grandpa Tilly has visitors. As they get closer, Valor is surprised when the old man greets him by name, but the second Valor tries to answer, the old man cuts him off and demands silence. Without warning, he yanks a giant fish out of the water. Seeing Valor's reaction, the old man laughs and says someone so famous shouldn't be so jumpy. Then he gives Valor a sharp look and tells him to watch closely. A moment later, he brings the rod down on the huge fish and handles it with amazing skill. As he cleans it in one smooth motion, he happily says they've got a side dish for the day. Watching all this, Valor realizes he's standing in front of a true legend. With the boy clinging to him, the old man is finally revealed as Count Johannes von Tilly. Once Valor understands who he is, he can only stare in awe. Watching the Count with his grandson, Valor quietly clenches his fist and decides he will recruit him no matter what. A flashback explains that Tilly was once a legendary commander. For years, Count Johannes von Tilly led armies and won war after war, but later he started turning down every offer that came his way. Thinking it over, Valor realizes no one really knows why a man like that disappeared from public life. During the meal, Valor tells the boy he looks strong and full of energy. Trying to move into the real topic, he calls the old man General Tilly, but the Count immediately stands up and says he's leaving. Seeing that, Piffenheim says the man clearly has no interest in listening. The boy then asks if they came to flatter his grandpa, just like everyone else. Valor turns to the grandson and asks if he knows anything that could help. The child holds out his hand and says information costs money. Nothing in this world is free. Right then, an annoyed old woman comes in, demanding to know why they came back again. The grandson says the visitors seem decent and asks her to tell them Tilly's story. She studies the two men with open suspicion, then asks if they can keep a secret. Valor answers at once that they can. After that, she starts telling them what happened. In the flashback, Tilly rides beside a woman near a river, and she tells him her family protected that land for generations. Tilly says that once he retires, he wants to spend the rest of his life there. The woman smiles and says she understands. Looking over the river, Tilly thinks that kind of future would be a beautiful dream. But the memory turns darker, and now Tilly is pouring liquor over a grave. He speaks to the headstone and says he brought the rum his mother used to like. Clenching his fist, he swears to protect that land. The flashback shifts again as a noble and his guards confront Tilly and call him general. With a cold smile, the noble asks how much longer Tilly plans to stay stubborn over the debt. The old woman explains that they told the man to leave because they would never give up the land. But the noble says it makes no difference. To him, it's only a matter of time, and he tells Tilly to cooperate while he's still asking nicely. Back in the present, Valor realizes this goes much deeper than he first thought. Then he smirks and says debt actually makes this problem much easier to fix. The scene moves to a mansion, where the Count of Braysnake stands on a balcony with a drink, bitter that the prince barely notices him anymore because of Valor. Then he comes up with an answer. He'll secure that land for the prince. At that exact moment, a maid rushes in and warns him that someone has broken into the estate. Then Valor appears right in front of him, making the Count scream his name in shock. Valor grabs him and mocks him as a spoiled mama's boy, leaving the Count totally baffled. Pointing at him, Valor says he isn't doing this just for himself. Hearing the noise, the maid decides to run out and warn the others. But before she can, Piffenheim appears in the doorway with a terrifying look. She freezes in place, staring at him in shock. As she's about to scream, he silences her and warns her not to make a sound. Meanwhile, Valor tells the Count this is a once-in-a-lifetime chance for both of them, then asks Piffenheim to explain their side. While holding the maid back, Piffenheim speaks up. He says the Count and the prince are closely tied. Still trapped in Valor's grip, the Count nervously asks what they plan to do about the land. Valor immediately shouts in his face, asking if they aren't supposed to be good friends. Then he shoves the Count and warns that if a friend messes with Tilly, he'll cut him off without a second thought. Back in the open field, General Tilly looks over and sees them returning. With clear regret, he says he asked them to keep his current situation secret. Still doubtful, he asks if the Count would really give up such valuable land. Valor says yes and makes it clear the Count already agreed. Pressed into it, the Count confirms it. He says he gave up the land in exchange for friendship. Hearing that, the general repeats the word friend with obvious doubt. Throwing an arm around the Count, Valor cheerfully says they really are friends, and promises to say a good word for him. The grandson then tells Grandpa Tilly goodbye and wishes him a safe trip. He steps forward and says they don't need to worry about things there, while the old woman jokes that he's all worked up again and tells him to come back safe. With a confident smile, Valor keeps his eyes on the old general. In the end, Tilly hugs his grandson and accepts the offer. Valor and Piffenheim celebrate with matching thumbs up. Then a system window pops up saying Count Breitnig has been added to the list, followed by another confirming Count Tilly was recruited too. Far beyond this world, a group sits around a grand dining table. One man asks if the newcomer's name was really Valor. The woman beside him says the plan is interesting even if it feels a little shallow. Another voice says the man may still be trustworthy, but a harsher voice slams the table and orders everyone to be quiet. That single interruption shuts the whole room down. At the head of the table, a woman folds her hands, looks over everyone there, and finally asks if they can begin. She reveals that they are the assembled gods of Recontiatus. Then Yahello tells everyone to calm down and says they're only here to talk things through. After that, the man in white offers to start the long discussion. He asks Sovereign Yahello if bringing Valor into this was really the right choice. She calmly assures him that everything is going exactly as planned. A strange voice suddenly cuts in, calling the whole situation interesting. Then a crushing presence appears at the far end of the table. Black tentacles slowly rise from a dark portal on the floor. A woman steps out of the shadow. The man in white starts sweating as he stares at her. With a playful smile, she asks why everyone has gone quiet. She says she came out of curiosity, then looks at Yahello, who only watches her in silence. As they bring up the newcomer, his image appears on a screen, and the story shifts again. Now we're back with Valor riding through the forest beside General Tilly, who suddenly bursts out laughing. Tilly says Valor really is an amazing man. He points out that Valor already has land of his own, but Valor says this is only the start. With the general on his side, he wants to move even harder. The army is ready. He adds that they even have someone who handles recruitment, then uses a ring to contact them. The general is left confused. On the other end, Cobalt yells his name, and Valor knows right away who's calling. Annoyed by how urgent she sounds, Valor grumbles that something awful must have happened. Worried now, he asks if Pisamut has invaded her territory. The story jumps to Roserant, where the Empire's army is fighting Roland's forces. In the middle of the battle, she stands her ground beside one of her subordinates. A soldier reports that the enemy push has been stopped for now, giving them a little breathing room. Hearing that, Roland feels a brief moment of relief. Then another soldier says a message has come from Valor. Through the line, Valor asks if she's safe. She says she is and thanks him, clearly touched that he checked on her. Looking off into the distance, she says this whole mess feels strangely familiar. After scanning the battlefield, she says someone has to be pulling the strings, and suspects Amund is behind it. The story then moves to Amund's territory, where her camp has been completely wrecked. The humans there are terrified. Then a hand covered in rings reaches into view and instantly grabs everyone's attention. It's Amund, and she says they need to prove Valor's value to her. She attacks a man trying to run back to camp, but before the blow lands, Rudd steps in and yells for the demons to stop. Two monsters rush him at once, threatening to kill the human for getting in the way. They close in while Rudd gets ready to fight back, but before they clash, Amund orders them to stop. After looking him over, she says he's worth more than her own servants. She offers to make him hers and promises him great wealth. Robert questions the offer and asks what he would have to give up for it. Then he rejects her completely. He says he wants nothing from a demon. Right after that, he shouts for her to die and fires a sharp arrow straight at her. But the arrow suddenly stops before it can hit. Amand freezes it in midair, then throws Rudd back with ease. Laughing, she mocks him, says his attack meant nothing, and tells him this is all he's capable of. He can only grit his teeth as the scene changes. Back with Valor, he slams his fist onto the table and curses Emiende for showing up now of all times. Confused, General Tilly asks who this woman is. Valor sits down and explains that she's the craftiest of the demon kings. He remembers how she fights with huge numbers and layers of tricks. That makes him say she's the most dangerous and the most annoying of them all. Suddenly, a servant rushes in with news that something terrible has happened at the river. Panicking, the servant says a huge amount of filth is flowing downstream. Valor quickly puts the pieces together. If it's coming from upriver, then Piffenheim finishes it for him. The source is the Valpurgis convent. The convent is already in flames and falling apart. Its guards struggle to hold back a wave of monsters, while Angela smashes into one demon with a heavy blow. Even though she's worn out, she refuses to back down. The monsters see her strength and hesitate instead of charging. Margarita notices they aren't attacking head-on. Realizing something is wrong, she tells everyone else to stay back and calls for Angela to retreat while she steps in herself. A soldier shouts that Lady Margarita has arrived. Nearby, one of the convent's knights is already down, and the sight of her fallen allies fills her with rage. Even then, the monsters keep watching and wait. At last, they surge forward and attack all at once. Margarita answers by saying her anger will become a storm of power. Then she unleashes a massive blast into the horde. The demons are blown away by the force. She gathers another sphere of energy in her hand, pours even more power into it, and throws it into the enemy ranks. Hovering above the battlefield, she watches the destruction below. Angela, exhausted, says that kind of power could wipe everything out. A huge explosion rips across the battlefield and swallows the area. Elsewhere, Ammon remarks that the wind suddenly got much louder. Gudishwat congratulates her and says this place belongs to her now, calling her the Swamp Empress, Ammon. Surrounded by water, she reveals herself as the Water Demon Queen. Seeing her power, he decides the only way to live is to join her side. Smiling, Ammon says she always planned to spread west, and that she made an alliance in the name of independence. Floating above him, she coldly tells him that now he belongs nowhere. Guchua just laughs and praises how well she understands the tribes and their ties. Then in the next second, a sharp claw pierces a figure from behind. Caught off guard, Guchua demands to know what's going on. Still smiling, Amon says useless things like pride are thrown away. Blood spills from his mouth as he stares at her in shock. She kicks him away and says only those who grab their chance get to survive. As he falls into a pit, he yells at her to stop talking nonsense. He struggles back up and orders his warriors to kill every water demon, but no one answers his desperate shouts. Calmly smiling, she orders her demons to devour them all. At once, one of the water demons starts changing. It turns into something even more grotesque. Back at the convent, Margarita prepares another attack. She forms a dense sphere of energy and fires it at one of the larger monsters. Watching from a distance, Angela can only cry out Maria's name. As her subordinates collapse around her, Margarita freezes for just a moment in the middle of the battlefield. Then Mari steadies herself, gathers even more power, and faces the demons still standing, ready to keep fighting. Through the communicator, Valor asks if she's alright, and she says yes. Anger in her voice, Mary says they were used as bait and reveals that Amun is in the southwest. Even after that brutal fight, she forces a faint smile. She figures out the real target is the orc tribe, then jokes that she's about to run out of snacks. Back in the room, the connection suddenly cuts, and Valor anxiously calls out to Mary. Before he can say more, Amun cuts in and mockingly apologizes for ruining the moment between them. Valor is shaken and demands to know who she is. She introduces herself as the Great Demon Queen. Valor asks why she attacked the convent. With open disgust, he asks if she really isn't afraid of the Empire. Amun laughs and says the Empire wouldn't care about a conflict this small. Then she throws the question back at him. Does he really think the Empire can stop her? Valor suddenly makes her an offer. She could serve under him. Sounding almost thrilled, she says doing that together sounds wonderful. Then Valor smashes the table apart in a burst of rage, staring at her with fury. He tells her to go straight to hell. She only laughs and says he's cute for knowing exactly what to say. The scene shifts again as Valor slams his fist down and asks Piffenheim for an update on recruitment. Right then, the door flies open and Tilly rushes in, shouting his name. Mary comes in right after him and says she lost contact, so she ran here right away. The second she sees Tilly, she says it's been a long time. Then she turns to Valor and urgently asks what happened. He just stares at her in silence while she starts reporting. Elsewhere, the Brotherhood's building stands under the night sky. Mary angrily says Amundamol sealed away the lake's water dragon. She explains that the dragon had been keeping the water demons in check this whole time. It was also the one overseeing the others, including Amundamol. Mary adds that the pollution got this bad because of Amundamol's actions. Then she asks if the Emperor's side plans to do nothing but watch. Valor decides they'll have to deal with this problem on their own somehow. Then he asks Mary if she ran off again, just to come here. At that exact moment, a loud noise pulls everyone's eyes to the door. Angela stands there with a furious glare and a clenched fist. She grabs Mary by the head and angrily orders her to come right now. Later, while talking with Valparaiso, Valor says the damage there must have been serious. He then asks about the situation on the Prince Elector's side. From what he hears, he realizes he'll have to handle this mission alone again. After that, Valor and Valparaiso sit in silence. Then their image begins showing through some ancient screen. A moment later, it lights up and reveals who has been watching them the whole time, Aquila, alongside another being. The Great Dark Lord smiles and says this is getting interesting. Aquila says he's glad she enjoys it, but reminds her this is still a test. One man snaps at Aquila, saying this is no time to play around. Another argues that if someone like Margarita stepped in, the whole mess would be over. The blonde woman disagrees and says this time is much more complicated. She explains that Amania's side is too dangerous to take lightly, especially now that the orcs have joined them. The entity says they need an answer, but warns that meddling always brings consequences. Then she asks Aquila if all of this weren't already part of his plan. She points out that he has guided countless great lords before, and Aquila calmly says that's true. He adds that if the one at the center can't handle a trial like this, then they were never fit for the role. He invites her to stay and watch how their wild card does. Valor lets out a long sigh, clearly worn down by everything going on. Valberga says goodbye and explains that she has to go, and he tells her he'll reach out again later. Soon after, Ribschild shows up and points out how tired Valor looks. Still, he proudly says he recruited 1,000 people in just 1 week. Even so, Valor warns that they're still in a terrible spot. Confused, Ribishu stops and tries to think of a solution. He suggests they move to the next city, but Valor says that's not the real issue. He gestures as he explains that the problem is much bigger than that. Then he suddenly pauses, and a new idea hits him. With his energy back, he jumps to his feet and orders Piffenheim to bring General Tilly at once. Ribischild asks if he finally figured something out, and Valor says yes, giving him credit for helping spark the idea. Smirking, he says he finally has the answer, and wonders how he missed it, until now. In the end, he decides the only way forward is to make the whole game bigger. He says he'll pull many more people into the war. When General Tilly arrives, Valor says he needs advice right away. Then he reveals that he wants to bring Bastogne into the fight. Tilly warns him it won't be easy. because the Lord there is a genius. Full of confidence, Valor says he'll get past that with nothing but words. He adds that if things go really bad, he still has 2 other cards to play. Tilly cuts in and says he knows an even better way. The scene shifts to Bastogne, where Valor arrives and finds someone waiting at the castle gate. The woman greets him politely, then introduces herself. She says her name is D'Artagnan, and that she serves the castle lord. She asks about his companion, but Valor says the man can be trusted. She studies the hooded figure beside him, while Tilly stays quiet and keeps his face hidden. After a moment, she seems to get it and lets them both in. Once they reach the office, they wait for the lord to start. Mentioning the letter, Valor says he heard the castle has been having trouble. When tea is served, the real talk begins. Introducing himself, Richelieu says it's an honor to meet the man everyone has been talking about, Valor. He adds that Valor's name has spread far. Then, lifting his cup, he gives his answer right away. He flatly refuses to cooperate. He says Valor is nothing more than a mercenary from the countryside. Worse, his methods are built on threats and pressure. To make things even harder, Richelieu brings up the rumors that Valor allied with a demonic dragon. Explaining himself, he says the pressure on him leaves no room for another choice. The hooded man agrees with that call and praises the young lord for seeing the situation clearly. Then, with a small smile, he speaks to Richelieu directly and pulls all his focus. When he removes his hood, the lord is left speechless. Stunned, Richelieu asks if he really is General Tilly. Laughing at his reaction, Tilly says he moved to this area a while ago. Still unsure, Richelieu asks if everything he just heard is true. Tilly says yes, and adds that Valor is far more trustworthy than he first looks. To Richelieu's surprise, Tilly says Bastogne is like a second home to him. His face turns serious as he explains how deep his ties to the place really are. He says he was close friends with the former Lord, Antony. Then he asks Richelieu if he knows the real reason Tilly left the battlefield. Confirming the guess, he says there was another reason, and notices Richelieu wants to hear it. Tilly explains that the world had started treating him like he was no longer needed. Outraged, Richelieu says that makes no sense for a famous general praised across the continent, and Tilly thanks him for saying that, but Tilly goes on to say that kind of praise only exists because Richelieu thinks well of him. If the empire had truly welcomed him, it never would have left his parents' graves in that state. Then he explains that when he was trapped in his city with nowhere left to turn, one thing changed everything. He reveals that was when Valor came to find him. Folding his arms, he finishes while looking out the window, then turns back and asks what Richelieu thinks now. Richelieu can only stare in silence, taking in everything he just heard. Shaken, he thinks back to his bond with Lord Antony. His lessons, guidance, and kindness from when Richelieu was just a boy serving the city's lord. Back in the present, he turns to Valor, who has been quietly watching. Then Richelieu asks if he can give beloved Bastogne back to him. Keeping his face calm, Valor says he can't promise that for sure. D'Artagnan gets angry and snaps at him for joking at a time like this. Richelieu agrees that it isn't that simple, especially since he never even met Count Antony. Even so, Valor looks him straight in the eye and says there is one thing he can promise. Reaching out his hand, he vows to drive out Jacquer and the Prince Elector. After a long silence, the Lord finally makes his choice. With a faint smile, Richelieu admits defeat and agrees to join the war. Shocked, D'Artagnan asks if he's really sure. Even Tilly questions her reaction, since he clearly didn't expect her to push back that hard. D'Artagnan then shouts at the Lord, asking if he really plans to hand over the castle so easily. Using the moment, Richelieu says he has one more request, and Valor agrees to hear it. Smiling, Richelieu asks Valor to take de Conric with him. Slightly caught off guard, Valor waits for more. De Conric explodes and yells that there's no way she's going with them. She protests so loudly even the horses outside react. She can't believe the order and refuses to accept it. Trying to calm her, Richelieu explains that her job will be to watch Valor. Valor yawns, says that works for him, and adds that he'll be counting on her. Richelieu explains that D'Artagnan is his best person for intelligence work. Wearing a disgusted look, she makes it clear she hates the plan. In the end, she agrees, but only for 5 years. Richelieu then asks Valor what he plans to do next. To everyone's surprise, Valor says they'll start deciding that right now. He explains that their alliance matters more than anything else first. No matter what, he plans to turn his enemies against each other and use that to bring down Amundi. Richelieu warns that those two sides hate each other, but Valor says they can use Bastogne itself as the hostage. Watching the talk, Tilly says it would all be easier if the heirs were in charge instead. Not getting what he means, Valor asks Tilly to explain. Tilly says the heirs are a famous couple known all across the continent. As soon as Valor hears that, he realizes this could be the perfect opening for his plan. The scene changes. A guard points down and says the woman is Princess Julia. Getting her wires ready, D'Artagnan tells the princess to run the second she gives the sign. With firm resolve, Julia nods and gets ready to move. Without a moment of doubt, D'Artagnan jumps in and attacks the enemies all at once. Using her wires with amazing skill, she cuts a path through the crowd, blocking them. Then she shouts that it's time to go. The two sprint down the hall and escape, leaving their enemies behind. Back in the present, Leon asks if Princess Julia is really still alive. He wonders if she can actually reach them, since security around Jaeger's castle is tighter than it looks. Taking a drink, Jaeger tells him not to worry because D'Artagnan can be trusted. Richelieu backs that up and says she's more than capable. Leon finally accepts that. Watching from the side, Richelieu says Jaegu is a strange man. It bothers him how Jaegu already seems to understand d'Artagnan almost as well as he does. Then two figures appear, and Jaegu says they've finally made it. As soon as Princess Julia enters, she cries out Leon's name, and he calls back to her with the same joy and relief. The two rush to each other and embrace tightly. Leon asks if the trip scared her, but Julia says no. Pointing at Ducapoini, she explains that the woman brought her here safely. At that point, Jaegu steps forward and says that now all the players are here. They can begin. Right after that, a signal fires into the sky, making everyone look up. Then, through the thick smoke in the garden, two men appear. The Demon King glares at the group and furiously calls them traitors. The Demon King explodes, calling them shameless, and the Prince Elector demands to know who gave them the right to arrange a marriage on their own. He grabs his son and says a marriage with demons will never be allowed. Holding back tears, the princess says she doesn't want to be taken away from Leon. Leon refuses to back down and stays by her side. Both fathers still reject the match. Pulling Julia close, Leon swears he will marry her no matter what. Julia answers right away. She chooses him too. Their parents, fed up, ask if either of them understands how serious this is. Then Valor cuts in with a smile and tells everyone to relax. He points to the sky and says even the stars are cheering for them. Right then, someone begins floating down from above. The two fathers recognize her at once and tense up. With a grand entrance, she introduces herself, saying the smell of love brought her here. Then she boldly declares that she will oversee the wedding, and Mary makes it clear nobody gets to object now. Annoyed, the Prince Elector recognizes Margarita and tells her to stay out of it. The Demon King warns him to watch his mouth. She's basically a devil too. Still smiling, Mari calls herself Margarita of love and justice. Neither father looks convinced. They keep staring at the nun with open suspicion. The Demon King says he's heard stories about her, and she quickly corrects him again. Before the fight can grow, Valor steps out from behind them and says he wants to speak. The Prince Elector turns and asks what he has to say. Using his skill, Valor politely thanks them and starts guiding the whole mess, exactly where he wants it. He claims the Emperor has already been told about the marriage between the two heirs. Without blinking, he adds that the Emperor fully approved it and even prepared a gift. According to Valor, all the guests have to do is show up. The ceremony is already ready. The prince then begs his father to let him marry Julia. Backed into a corner, the two fathers look at each other, both stuck. Spreading his arms, Valor proudly announces that the wedding will be held in Bastogne Hall. Inside, the guests congratulate the young master and admire Princess Julia's beauty. A few even whisper that she's too beautiful for him, which gets the crowd buzzing. Then an angry guest suddenly starts trouble in the middle of the ceremony. At the same time, Jaker walks up behind Valor, calls him a brat, and says they need to talk alone. In a low voice, he asks if the Emperor's gift story is actually true. The Prince Elector comes over too, grumbling about having such a rude demon here. At the altar, the officiant calls everyone to focus. The sacred ceremony is about to begin. She announces the wedding rite starts now, then asks if the groom will keep loving the bride even after he goes bald. Next, she asks if the bride will keep loving the groom until he falls in battle. At last, she tells them to prove their endless vow with a kiss. They don't hesitate for a second and kiss in front of everyone. Thrilled, the officiant declares that from this day on, the two share one fate. Outside, the guests cheer and thank Margarita of love and justice. Soon after, the two fathers corner Valor and demand an explanation about the Emperor's gift. He opens a scroll and reads the Emperor's congratulations for the marriage of the heirs. Then he reveals that this union is meant to calm the West. After that, he says the Empire now faces another threat, the Demon Queen Omundi. As a wedding gift, the reclaimed city will go to the newlyweds, and both sides instantly understand what that really means. Tiger gets fired up and says he'll take even more land, while Trier immediately argues back. Turning to his troops, Jiker orders them to move southwest at once. Trier also calls his men to march, determined not to let the demons take everything. Still bickering, the two leaders storm out in different directions. Once things quiet down, Richelieu walks up to Valor and says what he pulled off is amazing. He admits he's shocked that Valor solved a problem that had dragged on for years in just one day. Valor says he's dealt with this kind of situation plenty of times, so it's nothing special to him. Then he points to the Lord and asks who really hired him for this job. With a side glance, he mentions d'Artagnan as she watches nearby. After that, he says the people of Bastogne hired him too. Gesturing to the crowd, he makes it plain that all of them are his employers. Then he asks the Lord who the people trust now. Valor lets the question hang as he looks at Richelieu. Richelieu gets the message and promises to repay him, and Valor jokes that interest should be included too. With that, a system window appears and confirms Richelieu has been recruited. The scene shifts to Amon's camp. A subordinate rushes in, shouting for mother, then drops to his knees and reports that Valor formed a marriage alliance with the Prince Elector. She just smiles and says Valor's move wasn't bad. Then she orders the army to move and crush Wittenbeer as fast as possible. A man named Wallenstein steps forward and asks to lead the attack so he can prove himself. She looks down on him, mocking him as nothing but Pessimut's errand dog, but he stays calm and waits for her decision without reacting. In the end, she decides to test him and gives him 5,000 demons to command, however he wants. In front of the army, he orders the water demons to head for Wittenbeer right away, taking full command of the mission. At the same time, General Tilly is getting ready to move out with his forces. In the town square, people panic when they hear invasion is coming, and Reeves tries to calm them down. He yells for everyone to get ready to resist, but Tiffenheim cuts in and warns that they're only ordinary civilians. With the Lord away, he says they'll have to face this on their own. Then in the middle of the nervous crowd, one citizen suddenly recognizes the famous person who just arrived. People instantly start shouting the name of General Johannes von Tilly, and the crowd erupts in cheers, sure that they'll be saved now. Tiffenheim asks the general why he isn't with the Lord. Remembering Valor's request, Tilly explains that he was sent back to protect Wittenbeer. With a faint smile, he says Valor saw this coming from the start. Then they notice the army he brought is a strange mix, nothing like a normal force. After a short pause, Tilly seems to settle on his plan and asks the crowd if anyone is good at hide-and-seek. The story shifts again as Wallenstein leads Amon's army as temporary commander. Confident, he says they're almost at their goal, and boasts that Petzmetz's lackey will soon serve under him. Just then, a scout rides in with news. Wittenbeer is completely empty and covered in trash. Ignoring Wallenstein, one demon excitedly says he can't wait to crush any enemy they find. Wallenstein snaps at them, reminds them he's in charge, and warns that their enemy is sly and dangerous. Still ignoring their attitude, he orders the army to keep moving and return with victory. The troops ride through the deserted city, and when they reach the center, one demon grumbles that the place is just filth. Wallenstein threatens his own men, saying any disobedience will be reported straight to Amund. Another demon laughs at that and says listening to him in the first place is a joke. Scanning the city, Wallenstein notes there isn't a single person in sight, only piles of garbage. As the smell gets worse, one demon complains that it reminds him of the awful food back home. When another asks what the stink is, someone says the real problem is their own noses. Then a demon suddenly points ahead and yells that he found a survivor. Wallenstein turns toward the disturbance, and in that instant he realizes something is very wrong. The hooded figure facing them reveals, with a creepy smile, that this was a trap from the start. Wallenstein immediately understands the danger. The woman throws back her hood, spooking his horse and making him shout. Trying to recover, he strikes one of his own soldiers and yells for the army to form ranks. Now! At that same moment, archers line the walls with bows ready to fire. Looking up, Wallenstein realizes he's surrounded on every side. The story briefly flashes back as a citizen asks if leaving the city gate open is really smart. Tilly says the open gate will make the enemy careless, but warns that trick alone won't close the gap in strength. Crossing his arms, he shows this is only the first step in a bigger plan. Back in the present, the walls erupt as arrows pour down on the demon army, catching them completely by surprise. Tilly leads the attack and orders the second line forward as soon as the first volley ends. With arrows crashing down around him, Wallenstein realizes he was completely played. He looks back at the entrance and understands the open gate was the bait that drew them in. Then he remembers how strangely silent the city was and realizes that should have warned him. In the same moment, he figures out even the terrible smell was part of the plan, meant to throw off their senses. Furious, he sees the whole operation was built to make them lower their guard. His eyes widen as he understands how trapped he is, and then he spots Count Tilly calmly watching from above. Suddenly, a whip wraps around him and yanks him hard off his horse. Holding the whip, the woman asks where he thinks he's going. Burning with anger, Wallenstein glares at the woman and tears himself free. He hits the ground and curses the cheap tricks used against his army. The woman just smiles and says her part in this battle is done. Wallenstein charges at her to finish it himself, but Tilly drops from the wall and cuts him off. Their weapons crash together, and Wallenstein's blade breaks, throwing him back. Tilly doesn't pause. He lifts his sword and slams down a heavy second strike, sending Wallenstein flying. Before he can guard himself, he skids across the ground and struggles to get back up. Tilly is already on him. His sword stops right at Wallenstein's throat. With Wallenstein pinned, Tilly calmly says the battle is over. Checkmate. Keeping the blade steady, Tilly says he's heard plenty about Wallenstein and finds it strange that a man like him ended up serving Amund. Flat on the ground, Wallenstein answers with nothing but a hard stare. That silence pulls up his past. He always wanted to climb higher, no matter what it cost. He was born poor, so he started life with almost nothing. Cold and ruthless, he used every trick he could to move up. Even the lord he once served was just another step on the way. Then Tilly feels a huge wave of power pouring out of Wallenstein. Changed by that force, Wallenstein vows revenge. He swears Tilly will pay, and Tilly rushes in at once. Sword ready, he moves to cut down the transformed Wallenstein. But right before the hit lands, Tilly notices something and stops mid-swing. In the next second, Valor rides in and blocks Wallenstein's attack, then jumps high to strike from above. As he rises, Valor calls out the first form of his sword art. Power gathers into the blow as he comes down, driving the technique straight at Wallenstein. It lands cleanly and drops him in one crushing hit. Afterward, Valor lets out a long breath, easing out of the fight. Piffenheim greets him and says he cleaned up the mess nicely. Looking at Wallenstein's fallen body, Valor says the man's shape feels deeply unnatural. Nearby, a medallion with a strange mark draws everyone's eyes. As Valor picks it up, he regrets that he couldn't turn Wallenstein into one of his vampires. With the enemy down, he orders them to tie the prisoner up for questioning. The woman binds Wallenstein with her ropes. Later, back at his estate, things seem calm again in Wiedenbeer, until Walpurgis rushes in, asking if Valor is safe after the attack. But the moment she steps inside, she finds something she wasn't expecting. Ritter and Dee are already there. Meanwhile, Valor awkwardly tries to explain the situation. Dee introduces herself and says she's here to serve as Valor's new attendant. While Purgus quickly gets what's going on, and Valor remembers it's already time for the meeting. Turning away, she says she'll head to the meeting room first and wait there. As she leaves, she's clearly annoyed that another person has joined Valor's inner circle. On the way, Valor asks Dee who will be at today's meeting, then reacts in surprise when he hears Angela will be there too. Dee explains why, and a quick flashback shows Mary excited to help Valor with his mission. Back in the present, Valor gets ready to enter the meeting room. Inside, Jaker and Trier's side is already seated on one side of the table. Across from them, Roland and the convent's representatives are waiting as well. When Valor walks in, he apologizes for making everyone wait. Then he declares that the meeting on subduing Amund will begin now. Jaker impatiently boasts that his great lord already scored a huge victory. Ignoring the jab, Valor asks for an update on Roserant and the Sisterhood instead. Roland says the sewer demons are causing serious damage. Angela adds that the convent is still trying to take back lost ground. Mari wears a sly smile, looking ready to jump into the discussion, and Angela snaps that things would go smoother if certain people stayed quiet. Then General Tilly speaks up and offers his opinion. He suggests striking Pessimut's army to turn the war around. Valor agrees the timing would be good but says there's one big problem. It would bring down the Tomb Guardian's anger right away. Tilly understands, Valor apologizes and says he can't follow that plan. The prince asks how Valor plans to deal with the crisis instead, and Valor answers directly. He says the sewer demons keep multiplying every moment. Annoyed, Mary yells at the prince and says the answer should be obvious. Angela quickly grabs her from behind and holds her still to calm her down. Valor isn't bothered and says the question is completely fair. Then with a confident smile, he reveals his answer. In just 3 days, he'll put an end to all their worries. The story shifts to Amund's camp, where Pessimut's underling is getting viciously cursed for failing. Amund stays completely calm and says she never expected anything from that idiot anyway. Then the scene changes again, and Valor smiles as he says a merchant's sense of humor is better than expected. The merchant laughs and praises Valor's wit. He introduces the woman beside him and says he brought her along to strengthen their relationship. The woman, clearly annoyed, says that was never part of the deal, but the merchant ignores her. Without warning, he grabs her, making her cry out. Then Valor shows an item and asks if the artifact in his hand is real. Smirking, the merchant says it's a rare antique. He goes on to say the artifact can stop petrification. The scene shifts again as a secret auction begins, with masked guests seated in the hall. Around them, captives sit in cages waiting to be sold. The auctioneer spreads his arms and announces that the bidding is about to start. His first item is a young elf who only recently awakened her mana. Interest spikes right away and the bids climb fast. At last, one man shouts 150,000 and ends the competition. Before the next item comes out, one of the auctioneer's men interrupts and urgently reminds him about the special request they were given. A little nervous, the auctioneer presents the next item, a wooden necklace, calling it a work of art. Almost nobody reacts, and the room goes silent. With an awkward laugh, the auctioneer comments on the weak response and gets ready to move on. Then Valor raises his paddle and opens with 100,000 florins for the necklace. Excited, the auctioneer asks if anyone will go higher. A mysterious voice suddenly offers 500,000 florins. Valor turns toward the unexpected bidder. The hooded figure calmly confirms the 500,000 offer. The story briefly cuts away as Amund turns to her servant and gives him a new order, making it obvious how unhappy she is with the current situation. She tells him to go to Lindau at once and secure the item no matter the price. Grabbing him hard, she stresses again that this object matters above everything else. Back at the auction, the guests are stunned by the 500,000 bid. The auctioneer repeats it out loud and announces the current offer. Annoyed, Valor raises it to 700,000, keeping the fight going. Smiling, the hooded figure answers right away with 850,000. Feeling cornered, he realizes that if he quits now, his mother will kill him. Thinking the contest is nearly done, the auctioneer moves to close the bidding. But at the last second, Valor raises his hand again and offers 1 million for the necklace. He glares at his rival with open disgust. After winning the bidding war, he smiles while the auctioneer closes the item. Taking the necklace in hand, Valor says everything is fine now. When the auction finally ends, the staff say their farewells, thinking the night is over. As one of them turns to leave, the door slams shut in front of him. Before he can react, Valor appears at his side and grabs his shoulder, smiling as he asks where he's rushing off to. Amund's servant mutters that this is unfortunate. He grits his teeth and stares at Valor, unable to understand how he got so close without being noticed. Now he's sure Valor is planning something. Then Valor takes off his mask and shows his real face along with his true intent. With one blow, he drops Amund's servant to the floor. At the same time, Lena handles the merchant and curses him for what he's done. Stepping onto the stage, Valor thanks everyone for waiting and announces that the night's second main event is about to begin. A moment later, several undead goblins appear and throw themselves at the guests. Smiling at the panic, Valor calls it a lovely meeting with his goblins. One guest screams as a creature jumps at him. On the floor, the merchant demands to know why Valor is doing this. Valor simply watches the chaos he set loose. As confusion spreads, Ammon's servant decides he has to escape as fast as possible, but Lena stops him with her threads and asks where he thinks he's going. The necklace drops to the floor, and Valor walks over to pick it up. With nowhere left to run, Ammon's servant freezes. Crouching in front of him, Valor warns that the real fun is only starting. Then he gets straight to it, and asks if the one listening through him is really Ammon. Furious, she snarls and calls him a rat for daring to provoke her. With a smirk, Valor moves to reveal the core of his plan. Still crouched there, he asks if she truly thinks he came all this way like a fool. She is thrown off when he tells her he didn't come here blind. He says he already knows what she's hiding in her nest. Back in the auction hall, one of the goblins lets out a laugh and says their boss is furious. Someone turns toward the goblin and looks at it, totally confused, not understanding any of this. The goblin says they also brought all the slaves here. Pointing at the crowd, he adds there are about 300 of them. Lena looks uneasy and says if they hadn't done this, those people would have just been sold off somewhere else. That makes her remember the time she was a slave too. But Valor calls out to her right then and tells her to pay attention. He snaps at her for spacing out during a job. Lena apologizes and admits she got lost in her thoughts for a second. Then she asks what he plans to do with all those slaves. Pointing at them, Valor says he'll settle every one of them on his land and have her take care of the papers, like it's nothing. He adds that he'll hand them over to Ravis to put them to work. Lena actually finds that funny and starts laughing, so he asks what's so amusing. With a smile, she tells him he's a really strange person. Valor then orders the goblins to take all 300 slaves somewhere safe. As Lena changes clothes, she asks if he isn't going back to Wiedenbeer yet. He says he still has one more thing to do, then tells her to call him master. After saying goodbye, she leaves, and he notices she's let her guard down around him. Then he focuses on the next job. Surrounded by sewer demons, he asks if it's time to clean this up. A group of water demons glares back at him, and he gets ready for the fight. He watches them and prepares for another battle, saying stupid creatures always love moving in groups. A second later, one of them leaps at him with full force. Valor raises a hand, ready to wipe them out. Without even hesitating, he slams the first demon into the ground and crushes it. The others scream in rage and charge all at once. He draws his sword and readies a new version of his technique. With one smooth move, he unleashes a chain of strikes and cuts down everything around him. The impact kicks up dust and cracks the ground under him. Then he feels a much stronger creature appear and turn toward him, ready to fight. It whips its tail at him, but Valor barely dodges it. He dashes in and lands a clean hit, but the creature swings back with several tentacles. After blocking them, Valor wonders if they're seriously looking down on him. Smiling, he says he didn't expect them to send just one giant brute. Not far away, the demon leader watches the fight in silence. Hovering above, the leader warns him not to get too sure of himself. Then it points at him and orders the troops to kill that pathetic human at once. Valor forms a hand sign and calmly gets ready for the next wave. With a smile, he says if that's how they want to do this, fine. Several shadow servants appear and jump into the battle. One of them is Piffenheim, one of Valor's most dangerous and loyal followers. A woman appears too, saying she's getting plenty of new toys today. The demon leader sees the newcomers, points at them, and gives the order to attack. Valor's face turns cold as he gives his own command. The second he tells them to finish it, they rush in. The summoned servants crush the sewer demons without slowing down and wipe them out with ease. Seeing that, Valor says the fight got pretty intense for everyone. Then he decides to leave soon because there's still something important he needs to find. Furious, the demon leader yells for the others not to let Valor get away, but before it can finish, the leader is hit from behind and killed. Piffenheim tells Valor to go, saying they'll deal with whatever enemies are left. At last, Valor reaches the crystal cave he had been looking for. Staring at the entrance, he mutters that he gets lost every time because the place moves around at random. He also says that woman's taste is seriously bizarre. After a quick glance to the side, he braces himself and moves on. Ahead of him, inside an egg, is the shape of a huge dragon. Looking closer, he realizes it's the lake's water dragon. He moves fast, knowing he has to act before Amundi gets there. Suddenly, the whole cave starts shaking and pieces begin crashing down around him. He turns and faces the new threat in front of him. Smiling as she steps in, Immune enters the cave for the final showdown. She spots him and says she finally found her target. Amundi smiles, calls it a gift, and throws Valor's injured subordinate at him. Valor catches the man, his face hardening as the subordinate slumps weakly in his arms. Immune adds that the man was impressive and surprisingly good at giving directions. Valor quietly agrees, then says the man is still better than her. A dangerous look sharpens in his eyes as he adds that at least his subordinate was a decent person, unlike someone who walks straight into an enemy's place just to die. Her smile twists in anger. Purple power bursts around her as she calls his confidence pure arrogance and says she has no reason to fear Silch. Dark energy spreads through her body, scales cover her skin, and a huge snake-like tail lashes through the air. She launches forward at terrifying speed, tearing up the ground and throwing stone everywhere. Valor drops low with his sword ready, dodging the glowing purple orb she fires at him from every side. Then Valor spins into motion and uses the lunar shadow sword art, striking with chain crescent slash to cut through the attacks. Golden arcs split apart the purple energy, but Amunzi just laughs, pressing him with both her tail and magic. She charges in again with crushing force and drives him back. The hit sends Valor flying across the field, smashing through stone as blood and sweat run down his face. Standing over him, Amunzi asks what gave a weakling like him so much confidence. Valor steadies his breathing and thinks he can finally see it. His sword darkens as he releases Dark Moon and lunges forward with a blinding golden slash. The strike rips through the air and Valor thinks it landed perfectly. But Amunzi slips past it with unnatural speed, her tail already swinging before he can fully react. Smiling, she says the attack meant nothing. Valor crashes into the shattered stone while she asks if he really thought she came here unprepared. Purple shadows gather around her, turning into vicious shapes and spears of darkness. Calling him a pathetic fool, she sends them all down at him. The shadow blades rain toward him, but right before they hit, everything stops. The darkness around Valor grows deeper and unnatural, and a voice says this has been disappointing. A single eye opens in the black void. The ground turns into an abyss and giant tentacles rise around Valor, swallowing the battlefield in something far beyond a normal attack. Then a monstrous mouth opens in the darkness, packed with sharp teeth and a swirling, endless void. Beneath it, a pale woman in purple calmly rises among the tentacles. Valor stares in shock and blurts out that it's Abyss. Abyss says she hoped this time might be different, though she admits Valor has lasted a long time for a mortal. Valor goes still, confused by how calmly she keeps talking. He wonders why she says so much, then thinks all these so-called Grand Lords of Darkness are weirdly chatty. While Abyss keeps speaking in vague, threatening pauses, Valor studies her more closely. First he thinks maybe she's avoiding killing him because he's a VIP, but he throws that idea out. Then he understands it's not that she doesn't want to kill him, she can't. So Valor suddenly tells them to wait. With a faint smile he says they're missing something. Abyss silently watches as he asks if that isn't strange. He wonders why the Grey Grand Lords of Darkness would ever give anything to a tiny speck like him, for no reason. His mind goes back to what he used to believe. He had made choices that shaped his road, but now he sees this whole game was hiding something insane. As a huge purple eye opens above everything, Valor realizes the real question isn't why they were attacking him, it's why they kept him alive this whole time. The Great Lords of Darkness spared him for a reason, and he decides it's worth testing that path. Even hurt and bleeding, he looks Abyss in the eye and asks what she wants from him. Watching from beyond, Abyss remembers another goddess asking if she was curious too and saying they should watch the Joker. Abyss smiles and says it's exactly what she expected, then calls Valor truly twisted. In the next instant, she moves close, wraps him in her tentacles and kisses him, amused by his defiance. She says she hopes he won't bore her. Then time starts moving again, and Amandai attacks once more with purple blades of dark power. Valor cuts through them with golden sword strikes clashing against her storm of energy. Blue system windows appear, announcing that Abyss's gift is growing stronger. His stats rise fast, his lunar shadow sword art improves, and its final form becomes available. Then a warning appears because he doesn't have enough mana, his life force will be used instead. Valor's eyes sharpen as the lunar shadow sword art reaches its final form. Amandai laughs and tells him to stop acting above himself, calling him a brat. She says nothing. He will change a thing, and charges straight into his glowing attack. Valor swings with everything he has, unleashing a huge golden slash that crashes into her dark power and tears through the battlefield. Valor survives the clash, but he's left gasping for breath, blood still running down his face. As Amundi vanishes, she laughs wildly and asks if he really thought she'd back off from something like that. Then she says by now her subordinates should have reached Feidenbear. Valor's face changes at once. He realizes the real danger and curses Amundi under his breath. He knows he has to hurry and contact General Tilly no matter what. Somewhere else, the goddess tells Abyss not to make a scene. Looking down below, she said that woman couldn't do anything. At an inn, the defeated demon girl happily held up a piece of fried chicken and said it was amazing. She asked the innkeeper what it was, and he told her it was called fried chicken. The green slime nervously tried to remind her this wasn't the time to relax. Pessimut and Roland's fight was getting worse. The war was spreading everywhere, and she was taking it way too easy. The horned girl just asked what she was supposed to do about it. Then she shrugged it off, it wasn't her problem. A figure in armor arrived soon after. The green creature greeted Zaguro and asked if anything strange was happening outside. From inside the armor, the purple-haired girl said nothing unusual had happened. Then she quietly added that was only true for now, because demons had already gathered outside Feidenbear. Zaguro immediately asked where her food was. She got an empty plate back with a smile. The purple-haired girl froze. She knew she was doomed. In a dark, dreamlike place, Valor drifted through water and felt oddly calm. It was soft and light, almost like floating through the sky. When he opened his eyes, he found himself in bed. A small girl with antlers sat nearby. She said it looked like he was awake. Startled, Valor sat up and asked who she was. The antlered woman gently introduced herself as Benevolentia Genetrix and said she was the water dragon that had been sealed inside the crystal he saved. Smiling warmly, she added that she had saved him too. Valor just stared, too stunned to speak. Seeing his confusion, she said her name was hard to say, so he could just call her Jenny. Valor repeated the name in disbelief, and when she leaned closer, he nervously asked what she was doing. Before she could answer, someone knocked and said Valor seemed to be awake, then asked to come in. Both Valor and Jenny went awkwardly still. A tall man walked in, laughed and joked that while he wasn't looking, Valor had become a real man. Blushing hard, Valor recognized him at once. He stammered out that it was Rudd. Rudd smiled, and Valor admitted he never expected to meet him in a place like this. Rudd said he was just as surprised. Jenny called it a strange coincidence that one of the purified ones knew Valor. He sincerely thanked her for saving his master, but then he remembered the emergency and shot to his feet. He asked what happened to Vin and Bear. Jenny calmly said there was nothing to worry about. Rod explained that after getting a message from Chaltz, they stayed in the village briefly, and then an unknown group wiped out the water serpent demons. Valor asked if he was serious, but Rod just laughed. He told Valor to stop stressing so much and suggested they go outside to celebrate seeing each other again. Outside, Valor saw a shining blue lake spread out before him. Jenny explained this was the true form of the purified Bodin Lake. The light Valor had returned to them. As he walked beside her, little lake spirits gathered around him. One child pulled on his cloak and said it looked cool. Another wanted to go fishing, and another asked if he was good at fighting. Jenny explained they were lake spirits who woke up when the seal was broken. Without Valor, they would have stayed trapped forever. Valor quietly said that was a relief. After the peaceful moment, Jenny admitted she had one favor to ask. Before she could say it, Valor's communicator rang. He answered, and Roland urgently said there was a problem. She explained that Peshamud had disappeared. Valor asked what happened. Roland said they raided his base, but he vanished without leaving a trace. She had already ordered everyone to search the whole area. Valor realized this was his mistake. He cursed Peshamud as a slippery bastard and knew that sharp survival instinct made him dangerous. Angry at himself for the mess, he swore he'd catch Peshamud fast and drain him dry. Roland said she would take responsibility for now and find him herself. Valor shut that down and said he'd handle Peshamud personally. At the same time, Peshamud ran through the darkness in a panic, wondering how everything had gone so wrong. He couldn't tell if the real mistake was joining forces with Amyonde or letting Amyonde's subordinates escape. Then a red force slammed into him and sent him flying. Above him, countless red eyes opened in the dark. A terrifying presence said nothing could escape its sight, then called Peshamud a failure. Shaking, Peshamud cried out to the one in the grave and begged for one more chance. The red power swelled even more. The voice said he'd already had enough chances, and failures only had one ending: destruction. Peshamud panicked and screamed for it to stop. Right then, Valor appeared and reached down, blocking the attack. Peshamud looked up in shock as Valor arrived under the red moon and stepped in front of the red darkness. Valor shouted that he had come to make a deal with the Gravekeeper. Peshamud lay nearby, beaten and trembling under the grave's pressure. The Gravekeeper coldly called him Valor and said she had nothing to say to him, ordering him to leave. Valor pushed back, saying Peshamud was trash, but if she gave him over, he'd turn that trash into something useful. Peshamud angrily snapped at being called trash. The Gravekeeper noted that Peshamud hadn't even finished his contract yet, and still had the nerve to act proud. Valor admitted Peshamud was pathetic, but said his necromancy still had value. Around them, red-eyed beasts and spirits mocked Peshamud, saying possessing him wouldn't change anything. Then they turned on Valor too, calling both of them losers. That finally made Valor snap. He yelled for them to shut up, and said this was exactly why he planned to recycle Peshamud. Then he called the Gravekeeper thick-headed and quickly argued that Peshamud might not look useful, but Valor had some influence now. He warned her not to test him if she got in his way. He'd cut off his dealings with the material world too. The Gravekeeper paused and thought it over. Remembering what this mortal had done so far, she decided his request wasn't completely unreasonable. She said she didn't need Peshamud's soul that badly, but warned Valor that everything existed by her grace. Valor cut her off and told her to send him a few more while she was at it. She snapped back and told him to actually listen. Valor asked if she hadn't seen what he'd done, then bluntly said he was worth investing in. The Gravekeeper accepted, but made one condition. No matter what, Valor had to answer her call within 3 months. Valor repeated the deadline in disbelief. He figured it was about time for that one to show up. Getting impatient, he told her to stop dragging it out and hand over the spirit. A huge red eye opened, and the darkness around them turned into a flood of blue ghostly figures. The Gravekeeper explained that all those spirits once carried her mark, and she would give one of them to Valor. Looking over the fierce spirits, he dryly said they definitely looked dangerous. Then he spotted one in particular and called out, shocked Valpurgis. The Gravekeeper pointed at that spirit and declared that from now on, Asbriel would serve Valor. He panicked and asked her to at least explain who that was, but the pale blue spirit slipped into the jewel on his chest before he could refuse. The Gravekeeper said that was enough and reminded him to keep his promise. Valor called out to her, but she cut him off, saying she'd said enough and would take care of Peshamud too. Wrapped in purple energy, Peshamud dropped to his knees as she told Valor to do whatever he wanted with him. A moment later, Valor was alone in the forest, staring ahead in silence. Then he screamed for her to come back, but she was already gone. Later at Grossglockner, a huge crater-like arena had been prepared. A red-haired horned woman stood there with a green attendant, and the second she felt Valor arrive, she warned him not to show his face. Valor appeared anyway with a shameless grin and called out to Shombi, asking if she missed him. Shombi instantly exploded, called him a rotten bastard, and attacked while demanding to know what all this was. Valor calmly replied that the work looked good. He explained he asked Roland to redevelop the place a little. Shombi threatened to bury him there, but Valor just smiled and said that was exactly why she'd spent thousands of years alone. He raised a hand and golden energy gathered around him, blocking a sudden strike. He remarked that the attacker's style still hadn't changed. Looking over, Valor recognized the blonde man crackling with blue lightning. Philip, gripping his glowing sword, Valor said Philip had gotten much stronger. Then he added that Philip should use him to test how much he'd improved. Philip raised his dark blade and warned Valor not to get cocky, calling him an annoying bastard. His eyes glowed purple as he declared he would kill him. Shobi watched tensely while Philip trembled and said he'd go easy on Valor, just for today. Valor then said he had someone else to introduce. He turned and called them over. A black-haired wolf-like woman stepped forward with her arms crossed. Shobi immediately demanded to know who she was. Valor explained that from now on she would be making an undead army for him. The woman quietly introduced herself as Pessamut. That stunned both Philip and Shobi. Shobi blew up and asked what kind of mess Valor was causing now. He raised his hands and told her to calm down and listen. He explained that the war was about to grow much bigger. Their enemies weren't normal demons raised by darkness, but some hidden force they still didn't understand, so they needed an army too. Shobi admitted Valor always knew how to talk. Valor said Pessamut would work as an undead production unit. Pessamut explained that because of the contract, her power wasn't what it used to be, so she needed help. Valor looked at her coldly and she snapped at him not to look at her like garbage. Valor laughed, called her pathetic Lucermut, and summoned several shadowy female spirits from blue flames. He introduced them as Gundia, Aldata, Kaldura, Fugal, and Hijuju, then asked if that would be enough. Pessamut lit up, thrilled to work with forces like those. Valor thought it over for a second, then decided that if they were doing this, the place needed a new name. He got everyone's attention and announced that from that day on, the place would be called New Undead City. More solar. Shobi instantly blew up, asking who gave Valor the right to name it. The little monsters loved it anyway and started cheering for more solar. Soon after, a report came in. The subjugation was over, and Amundai, the Water Demon King, had been defeated. Back in the imperial capital of Wien, the Emperor openly praised the Marriage Alliance for calming the West, then gave Valor credit for taking down the Water Demon King who had terrorized the Southwest. He said he deeply admired what Valor had done, and hoped even greater achievements would follow. Then he formally announced that Knight Valorstead Valor would be raised to the rank of Count. Kneeling on the red carpet, Valor accepted the title. Later, at the banquet, Valpurgis said she still couldn't believe he'd become a Count. Then she corrected herself and called him Count Bar Bavin Valor. Valor gave an awkward smile and she pointed out how unusually well-behaved he was acting. He said he didn't really have a choice on a day like this. Then his hand touched his chest and he felt his necklace suddenly start to vibrate. Valpurgis said using a major figure from the Western Empire to hit Amund was exactly his style. Valor denied it and said he just got lucky, but she shut that down right away. This wasn't luck, it was his skill. Nearby, Calione watched the whole exchange, getting more and more annoyed. A second later, Calione marched straight over in a rage. She demanded to know how he had gone so long without contacting her, and asked if he had any idea how long she'd been waiting. Valor could only blurt out her name in surprise. Calione's voice shook as she asked if he didn't need her anymore. Before she could say more, Dalpurgin stepped in front of her and said she wouldn't be going any farther. Calione snapped back, asking who she was. Dalpurgins calmly introduced herself, and said she had come to serve the Count. Calione went still, stunned to see yet another woman at Valor's side. Seeing things getting worse, Valor raised a hand and tried to calm them down. Calione shot back, asking why she wasn't acting like a proper senior. Just then, Roland appeared beside Valor. With a teasing smile, she said being so popular was truly a sin. Wasn't it, Count Valor? Valor panicked and stammered her name. Roland just smiled wider. She called his reaction cute, then got to the point. Roland reported that the last of Pessamut's forces had been wiped out. After that, she asked whether Valor had found that girl. Valor glanced briefly toward Pessamut and said he'd explain later. Roland replied that she trusted him completely. Valor then asked if Pessamut's territory could be handed to Calione. Roland said she had already been thinking the same thing. Valor thanked her and explained that Calione had always been first in line anyway. As the Demon King's only direct blood relative, she should be treated properly. Roland blushed a little and admitted she felt jealous. She said she'd been working hard too, then leaned in close and suggested the two of them should just settle their relationship already. Before Valor could answer, Roline suddenly jumped into his arms and urged him to stop dragging it out. Valor went completely stiff. The sudden hug left him speechless. Calione, D'Artagnan, and the others all froze. Calione stared at them and demanded to know what they were doing. At once, the mood around the women turned dangerous. Feeling killing intent from every side, Valor nervously called out to them. Luckily, a knight rushed in and announced that His Imperial Majesty was calling for the Count. Valor instantly grabbed the chance to escape. He said he had to go at once, since the Emperor had given him a special task. As he followed the knight through the halls, he let out a breath and thought he had almost died back there. The knight dryly said that must have been hard. Valor thanked him and kept going. In a dark chamber, Valor knelt and respectfully greeted the Emperor. The Emperor said Schwarzteufel had told him Valor needed help. Valor immediately understood this had to be what Shobi meant when she said there was someone reliable he could lean on. Then an odd presence made itself known in the room. Feeling that heavy pressure, Valor wondered if this person really was who he thought. The old man said he would help Valor as long as the Empire's balance stayed intact. He also revealed that this was one reason he had arranged for Valor to receive the title of Count. Valor was shocked that someone this powerful had been so close the whole time. Then he realized what he was dealing with, a dragon. The moment he recognized it, Valor understood everything. The Emperor praised him for figuring it out so fast. The Emperor said this setup had let him enjoy himself lately, meaning the Empire had stayed stable. He explained that Amionde's recent actions had thrown everything into chaos, and the Empire had shaken in fear because of her. But once that problem disappeared and the heart of the Empire became one again, stability returned. So in his view, that evil had oddly been necessary. Valor thought the logic was a little twisted, but he couldn't deny the Emperor's conclusion made some sense. The Emperor said Valor was smart enough to understand that. Then he revealed he had high hopes for Valor, calling him fairly righteous and also someone who could bring in a lot of wealth. In the end, he said he would be depending on him from now on. After leaving the room, Valor muttered Shubi's name and wondered who exactly she had gone to for help. Completely worn out, he decided to head back, wash up, and finally get some sleep. But before he could go, someone called his name. For a second, Valor's face darkened. Then he saw Valpurgis walking over and asking if he had a moment. His mood instantly lifted, and he quickly said he had plenty of time. Meanwhile, in Munich, the capital of Bayern, 2 guards stood watch at night. One of them yawned, and the other immediately snapped at him for nearly falling asleep on duty. The tired guard apologized, but his partner warned him one more slip could end his military career. The sleepy guard brought up the Prince Elector's condition. His companion quickly told him to watch his mouth. Then the guard asked if he'd heard the rumor that the Prince Elector's worsening health was caused by a curse. The tired one laughed it off and said he was only repeating gossip, but the other guard angrily said he talked too much for someone on duty. Right then, a dark figure moved through the night. Blood flashed, and one guard was cut down before he could even understand what happened. The other guard trembled and shouted, asking who was there. A knight in black armor stepped out of the shadows. Red eyes glowed under the helmet, and killing intent poured off him. With a bloodied sword in hand, he coldly said things had gotten far too soft while he was gone. Then he added that it was a shame for his brother. His sword fell again, and blood splashed as the night went quiet. Later, during a night festival, Valpurgis walked beside Valor, and happily said a festival was going on. She admitted that was the real reason she wanted to come with him. As they walked through the crowded streets, Valor briefly thought this felt like a date with Valpurgis alone. He immediately pushed that idea away, and refused to think of it that way. His thoughts went back to when he'd carefully asked if there was any news about the Prince Elector. Valpurgis lowered her eyes and apologized, saying her uncle's condition had been weighing on her lately. Feeling embarrassed, Valor admitted he felt silly for getting excited when things weren't even going well. She stayed quiet for a moment, then she said things weren't hopeless. The Prince Elector hadn't been able to move at all before, but recently he had improved enough to go on walks. Valor said that was good to hear. He knew no one close to the Prince Elector could really relax while he was still away. At the same time, he realized Valpurgis must have made time for this meeting even though she was busy. After a short silence, she suddenly started to leave. Valor began to answer, thinking she had something urgent to handle. Valpurgis called to him and said she had to go right away. Seeing the look on her face, Valor asked what happened. Valpurgis told him a rebellion had broken out in Munich. Valor blurted out his shock at how sudden it was. He immediately wondered if the rebels had picked this moment on purpose while the Prince Elector was away. Realizing how serious it was, he said there was no time to lose and offered to help, saying even from Wiedenbeer he could still support her. Valpurgis refused. She said she would go alone because this was a family matter, then revealed that her stepfather had started the rebellion. Valor tried to argue and said that even if there was the smallest way he could help, but before he finished, Valpurgis stepped in and wrapped her arms around him. Valor froze on the spot. Holding him tight, she quietly said she'd contact him later. Then she left, disappearing into the crowd while Valor stood there unable to move. A purple shadow appeared nearby. Valor recognized Piffenheim at once, and ordered him to contact Rebus Schouts immediately. He stressed that every second counted. While Valor rapidly gave orders, a dark-haired man watched from the shadows. A faint smile crossed his face as he said Valor was remarkably quick to act. Soon moth-like creatures filled the air over the festival. The moment Valor got a clear look at the man, he realized it was Prince Elector Saxon. He demanded to know why Saxon had shown up now. Around them, people at the festival stared at the glowing swarm and excitedly said they'd never seen such beautiful magic before, calling it amazing. Sensing danger, Valor told Piffenheim to stay ready. Piffenheim answered at once that he would. Saxon calmly told Valor not to be so wary. He said he had only come because he wanted to know him better. Valor started to apologize, saying he was extremely busy, but Saxon cut him off by bringing up the rebellion in Munich and asking if Valor really didn't want to hear the truth behind it. At once, Valor activated a skill. A system message announced, Empire Agitation, SS grade activated. A red aura burst out and shot straight at Saxon. The dark-haired man wasn't affected at all, and Valor instantly knew his skill had failed against Saxon. Saxon calmly noted that Valor seemed worked up. With people still staring at the strange lights, he suggested they talk somewhere private. Not long after, they reached a quiet path in the forest. Saxon led the way, and Valor followed. Then the man called him by his full name, Valor Stedt. Valor. Saxon went over everything Valor had done, taking Beer in just 2 days and building ties with some of the Empire's strongest powers. He added that Valor had already beaten 2 top demon kings and called him a truly exceptional man. Then Saxon said his master wanted to meet Valor in person. Valor answered that if he meant the Emperor they'd already met. Saxon echoed the word Emperor, like the idea was ridiculous. In the next moment, a huge swarm of fluttering moths circled Valor. Saxon said it was absurd to compare his master to someone that low. That was when Valor started to understand what this really meant. Before he could finish the thought, a giant moth dropped down in front of him. A title appeared, Unranked Demon King. Crikes. Crikes said Valor had insulted his master, the Ineffable Darkness. Valor's eyes sharpened. He remembered the order of the Grand Lords of Darkness. Names like the Ineffable Darkness, the one crouching in the grave and thrashing death. Above them all stood the title of the strongest Dark Lord. Then Crikes made an offer. Serve the Ineffable Darkness, and endless glory would be his. He even promised something more valuable than that. Crikes said he would reveal the secret of the Byron bloodline. He asked if Valor wasn't curious about the secret tied to the one they both cared about. Valor gave a faint smile and admitted it did sound a little interesting. Right away, Crikes told him to cut ties with the Gravekeeper and swear himself to the Ineffable Darkness. Valor didn't answer. He suddenly rushed in and brought his sword down. With explosive force, the blow slammed into Crikes' barrier. Fire burned in Valor's eyes as he declared that next time, they'd have to beg just for the right to speak. Crikes' eye flashed red. The massive moth struck back at once, diving at Valor with terrifying speed. Valor twisted away, but the hit still blasted him backward through the air. As soon as he steadied himself, he raised a hand and called for the noble kin of the blood to rise. Dark power burst around him, but Crikes still held the advantage. Its huge wings spread over the sky as moths poured into the fight. Crikes calmly said resisting was useless, because this space had been cut off from the outside world. Only the 2 of them were trapped inside it. Valor gritted his teeth. He knew he wasn't strong enough to win alone. Crikes gathered overwhelming power and launched another crushing attack straight at him. Just then, Valor felt something strange. His eyes widened as the necklace on his chest burst with bright golden light. A shining blue and gold barrier formed in front of him, and a blonde young woman appeared from the light. She stepped in front of Valor and completely blocked the attack. Looking back at him over her shoulder, she told him he couldn't fall here. Even now she was smiling brightly, and then she urged Valor to hurry and go see Chartier.